Good morning, my kitty cats, chit chat, kit cats. You know what really sucks is when you leave your other computer on and it's playing in the background, which I just did then. But you know what? I know what happens. I just hit the button so it doesn't trip me up anymore because there is no such thing as bad days when you have a big coffee mug like this. And no such things as bad days when ding dong, I hear somebody at my door. And who could it be? None other than Mr. Andy Wood. Hey, Andy.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. Now I'm checking out some of that gear you've got there. Wow, that's nice stuff you got in the background. You got EVH, you got Diesel,
just tools there, various tools here in the woodshed. Yeah, I love those Bellas. Love the Diesel Herbert, a couple of Rev amps back there, an EVH XFX 3 up here in front of me in the command center. But in general, this is kind of an arsenal. There is a KSR Rhodes upstairs. You know the Kyle Rhodes amps, KSR. Unfortunately, he has a bad power tube right now. Uh-oh. So he's sitting up upstairs in the house because that means it's time for him to get some TLC.
Man, I'm jealous of your chair. That's a very comfortable looking chair you have.
Yeah, I have more comments on this chair. Amazon sells them, and I think it's OST or OTD or some kind of abbreviation that starts with an O. I actually got it. I'm a big video gamer, big hardcore gamer, and one of the websites I follow is IGN.com. They are like a guitar center of of the internet of gaming, right? And a lot of times they'll just run like these blast sales. So they did it, and this chair was like $49 for like 3 hours, and I was like, wow. Oh yeah. So I ended up liking it so much, I got another one for the game room. So,
firstly, gaming. I never knew why I didn't really get into gaming and why I was so bad at it at a young age. It's because I'm red-green colorblind. And
that's not. They've got colorblind. That's it. No. They got colorblind settings in the games now.
Do they?
It's not even a thing. Yeah, a lot of pros actually will adjust the colorblind settings on especially if radars, because sometimes radars tend to blink maybe like a light blue background, they'll blink red. A lot of colorblind settings will allow you to change just the radar.
Oh, cool.
So it'll blink a color that doesn't blend in so much with the background of the game, so it's a little more bright and ostentatious in your face, you know what I mean, so you can see a little bit easier. So yeah, I mean, like they've solved the colorblind thing years ago.
Okay, maybe I should have another go. I knew it was an issue when I went to a friend's place and he had one of those driving games, but arcade style, where you had the big steering wheel. It was like you were sitting in a car. And his 3-year-old kid absolutely kicked my ass at playing this. And I'm thinking, man, I've been driving for 30 years now. How the hell is it that this 3-year-old kid could beat me at this? And I soon realized I just couldn't see where it was going.
It might just be some freakish situation where that dude's kid's like the next Mario Andretti or something.
You know what? In hindsight, when I think about it, the kid's name was Ayrton, named after Ayrton Senna.
Oh, wow.
So that could be an indicator right there.
Could be a bit prolific right there.
I think so. Andy, I usually start these off, as I said to you before, by asking people what started the love affair with the guitar. But for you, man, you were a champion mandolin player way before you picked up a guitar, right?
Yeah, my granddad got me started playing mandolin with my cousin. My cousin's same age, and my cousin played fiddle. I played mandolin. We would go as a little trio to all the fiddle contests here in the States, especially in the southeastern United States. There are a lot of like bluegrass conventions, Americana conventions, and fiddle festivals and things like that. There's always like little competitions, mandolin, best guitar, best banjo, whatever. And we would enter those. We won some, we lost some. You know, it's just the nature of it. And I guess I was lucky more than once. So
cool. Now, can you just clear something up for me?
Yeah.
Is there a difference between a fiddle and a violin?
Yeah. This is my cousin's favorite joke. You ready? A violin has strings, and a fiddle's got strangs. That's your difference. He loves it, man. He tells it at parties, and it's always a miss, but I love it. So that's the first time I've got to use it. So Brian, I guess I owe you the copyright on that.
I have to remember that because I've been asked that many times over the years, and
it's same.
That's what I thought.
I think if you're looking at it if you want to get super nerdy and put up my virtual glasses, classical violins tend to only have a fine tuner. Down here, they'll have one fine tuner on the high E string. Fiddle players will have a fine tuner on each. And then to take it to another level, it's quite popular in bluegrass to have a fifth string on your fiddle. So it'd be a low C. Yeah, it'd be a low C.
Okay.
I can't remember if Brian's got a 5-string or not. He's got several really, really nice fiddles. But yeah, I guess it's on your musical vernacular on what you call it. You know what I mean? I guess it'd be like the way jazz bows call saxophones by, tenor or whatever. They just say he plays tenor, where it's like, I think someone from more academia based background, I'll play the tenor saxophone. I play in the woodwind section. I'm first chair. It'd be that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Now, I always thought that was the case, but I just wanted clarification from somebody. So, you start on the mandolin. At what age did you actually pick up a guitar? Seriously, I mean, I'm sure you picked it up before that.
Yeah. My family didn't have tons of money. My granddad was a construction worker, so he had what instruments he had, laying around the house. And those are the ones we played. There was no such thing as getting some student-sized thing. So the mandolin fit a 6-year-old very well. Yeah. So when I got big enough to wrap my hands around like a dreadnought-style acoustic, which is what my granddad mostly had, the big dreadnoughts, that's when I started like playing rhythm, and just being able to back up my cousin when he played his fiddle tunes, and he would play guitar well enough to back me up on the mandolin. I think I started playing guitar haphazardly around 10, 11, learned 4 or 5 cowboy chords, and that was it.
Cool. And from there, I mean, to get to where you are now, man, I've seen some videos of you, you're picking, it's just absolutely incredible, some of the speed and accuracy that you got going there. Did that translate from mandolin?
Yeah, I guess the gateway drug to the electric guitar, and maybe the big reason why I still, even my signature model's a Telecaster style shape, is a guy named Brent Mason. Brent Mason's Nashville royalty. I bought a Mark O'Connor, famous fiddle player, bought his record, the new Nashville Cats. And I bought it because a lot of my bluegrass musicians that I looked up to were on it. Guys like Sam Bush, Bela Fleck, Jerry Douglas. And accidentally heard track 4, and it was a song called Pick It Apart. Brent Mason's solo on that was like, it was that moment. It was that moment in time where I was like, I don't know how, but I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to get that thing. My first guitar was a blue Telecaster, and just started diving in blindly. And then from there, I was working in a theater in Pigeon Forge. Pigeon Forge is kind of like Vegas without the gambling. Like redneck Vegas, a lot of theater shows and stuff. And I was working on one of those shows when I was about 17, 18. And a guy played guitar there, worked with me, and he made me a mixtape. He's like, "Oh man, your picking's amazing. I guess you listen to a lot of Paul Gilbert." And I was like, "Who?" No clue, because I hadn't heard any of that stuff. So he made a mix CD that had the quintessential Steve Vai's For the Love of God, Eddie Van Halen's Eruption, Eric Johnson's Cliffs of Dover, Steve Moore's High Tension Wires, like all the big things that he could cram onto one old data disc, at the time. And I never worked on technique for the sake of technique. 1, I never worked on technique for the sake of technique. 2, by the time I was into electric guitar, I gravitated towards guys that picked every note because it was very similar to playing mandolin. You pick every note.
Okay.
Things that really made no sense to me were the Eddie Van Halen, wild, legato-y, slippery things. Obviously Steve Vai, and then going farther down that rabbit hole into Frank Gabali with his economy picking, and Holdsworth with the legato thing, and so that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I was like, how do you play all these notes and only hit the guitar once? Then I discovered what happens when you plug the guitar into an amplifier and you turn it up really loud, and how easy it becomes to, tip tap around that thing. So, my picking technique was, it's something I always work on, not because I'm trying to get better technique, but it's like I play a lot of Martins, and I play, when I string up my guitars for acoustic, I play, dreadnoughts with 13s on them. I play mandolin a lot. So it's like, I'm not trying to get better technique for the sake of getting better technique. I just want my notes to be clear when I play in an acoustic environment. And the sessions that I do are, it was like I do a lot of acoustic work on sessions. So I'm always trying to just have less finger noise. Like, you know, it's like more, and I think as a byproduct of that, you end up developing, you know, strong sensibility with cross picking and string crossing and the things that lend themselves to impressing your peers, you know, at NAMM.
Okay, yeah, NAMM, yeah. Man, I got to say, some
once
of those
a year, man, that's my day.
some of those guitar shows. Oh, I went to the Melbourne Guitar Show here last year, and I mean, there's some scary fast guys out there, but after a while, it just became a bit much, and you just want to hear somebody play something with substance, you know.
Yeah, it's and I have to say this, man. I look forward to NAMM more than anybody because I have so many international friends, fellow Australians down there, James Vanier, and you know, guys in Germany and Europe. I have friends, Jack and Martin and Tom and all those guys in Europe. So like, you know, getting to see all those guys. I was a group of guys from Spain that are a riot. Tony Martinez and his crew. They're great. So I agree that sometimes the guitar conventions or trade shows, they can be like Guitar Center but bigger, or Hell but smaller. You know, they can be like that. You know, or they can be that time of the year where everybody can get together and hang out. But you're right, man. A lot of times, and I think today, you know, it's based on chasing up clicks and stuff like that, and likes and whatever in the current culture that our guitar community's in with Instagram, stuff like that. People are chasing a lot of technique and a lot of facility. I think some guys are actually fudging the technique in the facility with some clever edits and edit work, which is cool, man. If that's what you want to do, cool. You know, it's not where my efforts lie, but I think with where we're at, technique gets so much at the forefront, and sometimes it's easy to lose your way. You know what I mean? And it's especially if you start developing great technique, you want to keep polishing it. Yeah. And it's easy to lose your way, and all of a sudden you've played for 5 years and you have no music out, you have no albums, you have no songs written. It's like you got to remember why you're trying to do it in the first place, to make some music. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
make something.
Yeah. Well, I was checking out some clips of yours, and it really struck me that you've got some great songs and some great melodies and things. And it's not like you go in there and it's like, okay, we're on, check out what I can do. It's like, no, you're setting it up. You're playing a nice, cool song with nice, catchy melody. And then, you know, when the time's right, you go, check that shit out.
Yeah. Oh, man, I really appreciate that. I feel like it's taken me 4 records to finally get to where I know who I am. You know what I mean? I know my musical statement. I know my mission statement with my music. And those first records, you just clawing at everything. It's like, hey, man, check out. I can play all this diminished stuff in 11. You know, I can play this chicken picking stuff. It's like I'm just clawing at things. But I feel like with Junktown, I finally found my voice, you know, truly found where I belong on the instrument. So that means a lot to me.
Cool. Now, you
takes
mentioned
4 albums to get there, many years.
Yeah. Of course. You mentioned session work. So you do a fair bit of session work? Yep. Well, I think that speaks volumes right there, because people hire people to play on their records that are going to play the right thing for the song. And I think that's what that comes down to. You're not just going to shred for the sake of shredding.
Oh, yeah.
Right. How did you fall into the land of session work?
Where I live, there's not a lot of mandolin acoustic guys that do that kind of thing. And I was about 17, maybe 18. I had a producer here in town in Knoxville, is a guy named Travis Wyrick. He's produced some pretty solid records. He's produced, you know, some POD, some Charlie Daniels, did some things with Dolly Parton. So it's like he's got a pretty good little resume. And he was doing, I think it was like a Christmas record or something, some kind of Christmas record. And it required a ton of acoustic playing, mandolin playing, banjo, bouzouki, like just random stringed acoustic instruments. And he had heard about my mandolin chops, and I'd already been playing professionally. I could read charts from being in the theater environment. And that was my first big session that was like, I made real money on it with like a check that had a comma in it. I was like, wow,
cool.
Okay. So, and then from there, you know, it just was word of mouth, and the sideman thing, you know, being a sideman for a lot of bigger artists, it kind of helped me polish that ability to step in to a rock environment, sound like a rock guy, while the next song may require something completely different, something probably more in tune with a, Jason Mraz record or something, I don't know.
Okay. You mentioned reading. So you're a good reader then?
I'm a horrible reader.
Are you?
I'm a horrid reader. I did a couple of years in the University of Tennessee, good jazz program there. Donald Brown, Mark Bowling, shout out to those guys. I did a couple of years there, and then I started getting hired, so I dropped out of school. But my sight reading and standard notation is typical guitar player, just good enough to get me in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as being able to read a chart and like what we call the Nashville number system, you probably heard that term. And actually, when I worked with a guy named Jim Riley, he was band leader for Rascal Flatts when I was working with them. Jim, when people say he wrote the book on the Nashville number chart, Jim Riley actually did write the book. It's like on Hal Leonard or whatever for the Nashville number system. So being around Jim and watching him work gave me a lot. I mean, it was like trying to be a sponge around guys like that and learn, getting your teeth kicked in every day by pros. It'll help a lot.
I actually haven't heard of the Nashville number system. What's that all about?
Oh man, it's like an elaborate form of shorthand. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of the founders were guys like Glenn Campbell and the Wrecking Crew and stuff like that. The basic idea is, let's say you've got a chord progression like G, C, and D, right? That would be in the key of G. G would be 1 root, and C would be, so you would do it in columns, right? Mm-hmm. If it's 4 beats, that would be 1 1 1 2 3 4. 1 again for 2 3 4, then a 4 chord 2 3 4, a 5 chord 2 3 4. So let's say you make your chord chart like that. All of a sudden the singer comes in and wants to sing it in like B flat. Like, wow, all you can do is erase the G at the top of the page.
Yep.
Change that to a B flat, and your chart's still the same. And that kind of interval based shorthand, I think, kind of made its way through Nashville in the late 60s. If I had to carbon date it, I feel like I'm speaking a bit out of turn. Jim would really know. But I think around the late 60s, I think it was in that Wrecking Crew, Glenn Campbell era. And it allowed players to plow through a lot of songs in a short amount of time. You know what I mean? Without having to have full lead sheets, like through the 30s and 40s, Gershwin was like their lead sheets. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they would also be like some of the variants were different. Like back in the Gershwin days, chords would be, if it was a 6 chord, it would be notated with the little dot and where you put your finger, and it would be this thing, it'd be like the weird, like the thing that doesn't, it's like nobody uses that voicing, you know what I mean? That grip. That's funny. I was just talking buddies with Noel, who's one of the teachers at University of North Texas, and he was using the same example. We were actually having a very similar conversation. And so that was pretty funny now that it's come full circle. We're talking about it now. But yeah, the Nashville number system is just a way to just help navigate stuff in a short amount of time, because most of the time on a session they're like, I need a hook in A, and they'll want some kind of hooky line, and they're like, no, I don't want that kind of staccato hook. They want something else, or whatever. It might be a lick or whatever. Nobody's going to take the time to put that into standard notation. Yep. A lot of that stuff's just developed on the whim, and you just need a loose blueprint to get through the tune. So that's kind of very long answer. Sorry.
No, that's fine, man. It's funny because that's when I'm learning songs to fill in with a cover band, for instance, I use that exact system. I didn't know that it had a name, in just thinking of it all in intervals, so that if they do throw the key a bit of a spanner in the works at the last minute. Oh, no, didn't mention we do that one in G, not A, it doesn't throw me right out. But it's funny that you said like the Wrecking Crew and all those guys were using that, because my good friend Louis Shelton, don't know if you know of Louis, but he was, you mentioned Glenn Campbell. He was Glenn Campbell's right-hand man.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he was,
I'm actually close with Glenn's kids. They're good friends. Funny enough, Glenn's son is a hardcore gamer as well.
Oh, really?
That's how we became friends. I have to brag on him though. Glenn's 3 kids, Cal and Shannon and Ashley. They got all that musical DNA, man. Like all 3 of them can do some amazing stuff. And Ashley has a great career. Shannon's fabulous multi-instrumentalist, and Cal is actually playing drums with Beck right now.
Wow, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So Louis was a part of all that. I've got a couple of great
sorry,
interviews.
I totally
No,
interrupted.
you're right,
I'm
man.
so
No,
sorry.
that's cool. That's what these are a chat, man. These are a chat. And so yeah, Louis, I think he moved from Little Rock, Arkansas, with Glenn to LA to try and make it. And Glenn had the face, and but yeah, he was there throughout it all. But he told me that on all the records he played, he never once had anybody throw music in front of him. At worst, it was a chord chart, and just like you're saying, making things up on the spot. The first big session he ever did was Last Train to Clarksville by the Monkees, and that intro, that was, hey, we need something that goes here, and that's Louis.
That's great, man. That's killer.
So that was a made up on the spot thing, like you said, and that was the first thing he pulled out. Some great stuff there, man. If you look into it, the big one for me is the guitar solo in "Hello" by Lionel Richie. I love that, and that was a beautifully made up on the spot thing by Louis. But I'm gonna have to pick his brain because he lives just around the corner here about this Nashville number system. I reckon he's going to know all about that.
I think it ended up getting a more glorified name for something that a lot of people just innately kind of gravitated to, especially academic players, classical. When you're in school and you're doing music 101, they have you do it Roman numerals. You know what I mean? That's kind of a thing. Teaches you about cadences and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the session guys of that era kind of just tweak the business model of it a little bit, But yeah, if you wanted a big history on it, I would check out Jim Riley's book, The Nashville Number System by Jim Riley. And that's anybody that's viewing this. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's the one. That's your encyclopedia that you get all your answers at.
Cool. Now, man, you said you had a blue Telecaster as your first electric. Was it a real Fender or was it a copy?
No, it was a Fender. It was a Fender. I was in, I believe it was Duncan's Music in Asheville, North Carolina. And I think I had the option to get a cheaper guitar and a better amp, or a better guitar and a cheap amp. And I got the guitar because, like I said, my family didn't have a ton of money growing up. And I opted for the American Telecaster. And at the time, it was maybe $600. And to accompany it, it had a PV Bandit to join it. So my first amp was a PV Bandit, and I played that thing for years. And my first real rig wasn't real. It was a Dynacomp and a Boss SD1 and a PV Bandit, and that's how I learned how to play.
Man, there's so many people that I've talked to that have said their first amps were PV Bandit,
whatever.
Rage.
Yeah.
Mine was a Studio Pro 112, I think it was called. So very, very similar to a Bandit. And you've obviously got high-end taste in amps, man, just looking at some of the gear you've got there. This
Herbert has served me very well. Back in my early 20s, I was in a modern kind of active rock band called Down From Up. We were touring with guys like Seven Dust and stuff like that.
Cool.
And that's where I found the Diesel stuff, and I took out a loan, ironically, from a bank to buy my rig. And this amp has been with me. I've had multiple Diesels over the years, and this one's been with me with all the biggest gigs I've ever played, man. And it's got some cool stories to tell. Me and this Diesel got to open for the Rolling Stones in Indianapolis.
No way, cool.
Yeah, so that was cool. It was every stop on the Rolling Stones tour, they chose a different big high level artist who would headline something anyways to open for them. And they chose Rascal Flatts to open the Indianapolis Brickyard. So I got to open for Keith.
Wow. Did you actually meet Keith?
No, I got to wave at him as he drove by on his golf cart. Hey, yeah, that's about it. No hangs. But it was fun. It was one of the biggest crowds that we had, like 100,000, 90 something thousand. It was insane, It was insane. But yeah, this amp's been to Europe, and it's been in all kinds of different formats. And it's actually people don't realize the Herbert is like channel 2 in the minus mode. Mm-hmm. That's just such a great sound. Just real classic, real sounds like guitar. You know what I mean? Everybody thinks Diesel and think, which it can do. Yeah. When I was playing with Scott Stapp, right after Creed split, Scott did the Howard Benson record, the Proof of Life, and I was the band leader on that tour. And then the Creed guys were doing alter bridge, so I needed something that could get me in the realm of what Tremonti, used, you know what I mean? So that I used a stereo rig with that. These days I'm using these Bellas, these Suhr Bellas, big fan of those. They're kind of like just really great bassmans. You know what I mean? And I like some pedals in front of it, kind of like that gain stacking thing that I've been lucky to become, past few years, spend a little time with Andy Timmons, get to know him. And I've learned a lot about tone from him. And that gain stacking thing's really nice. And then of course, I'm a super Van Halen fan. So the EVH is there. I mean, I just like, I got a Suhr Hedgehog back there. It's a pretty great amp, one of those little Rev 20s. They're just kind of like tools, man. It's like I'm not into trying to over EQ things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't like to change too much of fundamental tone. And if I don't have the right tone out of the amp, I just go get another amp. And I know that sounds like, oh, it must be nice, but I mean, it's like if you pay your mortgage with tools and you're a general contractor, you probably got really great saws and drills and things. Like, they're just tools, and you got to have the right sound for the job. Yeah.
I think people don't realize that, EQing the crap out of something to make it sit in the mix really takes away from the tone, as opposed to getting something that just sits there. I got a little Fox AC.
Just sits there. That's right.
Little Fox AC 10 back there somewhere. No, my microphone's right in front of it, is it? Yep. Right about there. And man, that just sits in the mix so well. It's got a little 8 or a 10-inch speaker. I don't have to EQ the guitars. It just sits just right.
I think that, that's interesting too. Is like guys don't realize, a lot of times that if you want something to punch a little harder, get you an amp that doesn't have a lot of gain, wind the amp up through a more nasally focused kind of sound, and it'll get you to punch through that mix. That way you can make your bass and your kick drum really big. If you ever hear the isolated guitars to those Motley Crue records, all that stuff's floating around on the internet. Man, those guitars are tiny.
Yeah.
It's all about Nicky. They've really like built the whole mix around Nicky 6 bass tone. Like that's, and then the guitars are just in there with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I mean, when you hear Dr. Feelgood, you're like, God, that thing sounds huge. It's like, you hear those remastered versions. It's just like,
absolutely.
So, there's a lot of cool tricks out there, and I've been lucky. I've got to spend a little time with a guy named Nick Brasky-Lennox. He's produced a lot of really big records. He's produced, Alice in Chains, Foo Fighters, all this stuff. And
cool.
Man, you talk about like having my ears on and being a sponge. Anytime that guy spoke, I was like, what was that? How you doing that? What mic is that? Just trying to like, even though I was just the guitar player on the gig, I was just still trying to like, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing is on anybody's musical journey is like if you're trying to, impress or not impress, but improve your own playing and your own sound. It's just like constantly be aware, like what's happening around you.
Yeah. A lot of the guitar players I've spoken to, heroes of mine from here in Australia or even overseas, have all said that it's working with these big producers and being that sponge and just like, what are you doing there? Yeah, just talk me through that. And one common thing is small speakers. There's a couple of guys over here that said they worked with Terry Manning back in the late 80s, and that his big whole thing was, well, that quad box sounds great in the room, man, but there's just no room for that in the mix. And like you say, that small sound. So they'd run it through tiny little amps. And there's classic stories of Led Zeppelin doing that as well.
Those mythos about the old Supros, those little Super amps, having like 10-inch speakers or whatever, But I mean, you look at guys like Derek Trucks. I mean, Trucks still uses 10s. I mean, he's using like Supers and Super style amps and stuff.
Yep.
And anybody says, he's got incredible sound. It's like greatest of all time. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's important too is like get your butt kicked. I mean, I can tell you a million stories about just eating crap on a gig, it's like that's how you learn and take a note of what went south, Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You got some horror stories to share there?
Man, nothing really crazy, like nothing like falling off the front of the stage or anything, but like little things about maybe even your pedal board where something's laid out, go to step on the same thing all the time, you kick it off because you weren't aware of like how things need to be set, and then you're fumbling around with your chord or whatever. Guitar tech runs out fumbling around. It's like, that or like being prepped for a gig. I got that flats gig, and I was super unprepared because of, I had all these other things going on at the time. That gig kind of fell in my lap, and I just didn't have time to prep. So those first 2 days of rehearsals, man, I was just getting steamrolled, And two, that's a very complicated gig to step into because Joe Don is the main guitar player, and I just had the studio recordings, and it's like those are Dan Huff produced records. There's 15 guitars on every song. You literally are just like, well, which one do you want me to play?
Yeah.
And the truth is, a lot of times the live versions that my job would turn into would be kind of mixed and matched. I would play this part during this, and then I would switch to the other guitar part doing this other thing over here, and the whole time I'm never the guitar that's down the pike because that's Joe Don. And then all of a sudden he's not going to sing on a song and he's not going to play while he's singing. And I'm supposed to be the guitar down the pike. So that was like, it's like as much listening to the songs as you could do. It was not like being in the room with them. And two, they'd had the same guys before me for like 8 years. So they were already used to like those same dudes doing the same thing. When you have something new, it was just like, I do not know what's going on here,
Yeah.
So, but that was one of those good things. It was like getting steamrolled, but in a good way.
And do you find yourself listening to songs over a long period of time, trying to get the arrangements into your head, or do you cram things in the week?
No. I'd rather listen to it for a long time if I could, but a situation like that, it's like there was no time. There was like I was in California or whatever doing NAMM stuff, and rehearsals were like the day that I got back or something. It's like, so I was already on another gig playing my music on another. So it's like the time wasn't there. I wish I could have had a month to listen to it,
Yeah.
But it wasn't a thing. I mean, like I guess it's all different on the gig too. The Scott Stapp gig was interesting because I had all of this time. Like I had 3 months to prepare for that gig. So it's like when we stepped in there, I didn't even just know my parts. I knew where the kick drums were. I knew where the basses went. Like I was like over prepared.
Yeah.
And I wasn't brought in as band leader, but it wasn't long on the gig till Scott made me band leader.
Okay. My friend Sammy Bowler now plays with Scott. Do you know Sammy?
I do know Sammy.
Yeah. He's a cool cat.
Sammy and I shared the Sammy Bowler is he's playing the Friedmans, right?
Yep.
He's a Friedman artist. Yeah, we got to share a little time together up in Toronto. I was doing one of the Cosmo Music Fest things, and Sammy was up there. Good guy.
He is. He is a sweet guy, man. Man, you mentioned Andy Timmons as a bit of an influence, and you've learnt a lot of.
As of late, for sure. I mean, like Andy and I did a clinic together at RMA Music Academy back in probably like 2012, 13, something like that. And of course we met each other and but I don't know whatever reasons, but over the past couple of years, our musical paths have put us on the same thing quite often. And so we become buds. We have similar, interests as far as music and sense of humor or whatever. And he's a great dude. But more importantly, I think it's obvious that the guy is a musical just giant. And getting to be around him, I don't think he's realized how much he's taught me. He's like very much like Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's what I keep saying. I was like, Andy's like an Obi-Wan. I really learned a lot from him about development on a solo, how to improvise and develop a story, motifs in your improvisations, tone, phrasing. Like it's things that he never sat down and showed me anything. But just like every time he's in the room, I'm like, what are you doing? How do you do it? It's like trying to learn as much as I can. And he's great, man. We shared some shows together. And we're getting ready to do an event at the end of August. We're doing a very, very small camp. It's a 3-day event. It's Joe Bonamassa, Brent Mason, Andy Timmons, Greg Rock, myself. I'm hosting it in Middle Tennessee, and it's called the Woodshed Guitar Experience. And a lot of our shows we've done have kind of been predecessors to this since, it's like when the C virus started going around, knocking everything down, all of us were all home. So I was like, I'd like to do something for music lovers and guitar nerds to have a chance to get to. And there's only 100 people. It's on a 150-acre property in Tennessee. But yeah, it's like, so I'm looking forward to getting to see Andy and catching up and playing some music with him.
Hey, Andy, there seems to be an issue with your audio, man. I thought it was me. You've probably... hang on one second. I'm just letting the people in the chat room know. We'll let Andy know. I thought it was my headphones. You probably see me just then fumbling around, switching headphones.
Yeah.
I thought it was my batteries running out, but it's not. You've kind of got... You sound like a droid off Star Wars all of a sudden.
I wonder if I restart my... It sounds normal in here. Let me turn it off.
Okay, man, you do what you need to do. I can keep talking if I lose you, or if you need to Skype back in or anything.
Let's try this.
Now I don't have you at all. You probably saw me then. I switched it just to you on the camera as I was thinking, oh no, my headphones are running out of battery, because I was hearing these aren't the droids you're looking for kind of sound. And when I stuck in my earpiece, it was like, nope, that's not what it is.
Okay, is it still droid?
Yeah, not as bad, but it's still just got a bit of a crackle about it now, mate. We can work through it. We'll
what about now?
No, it's still there.
Oh, man. You know what? Let's see if I can check my preferences.
Hey, that just fixed it, whatever that was.
I didn't do anything.
It's come good.
Is it good?
It's just come good.
So we're fixed.
We're fixed. You closed some kind of window then. I saw it like there was the light changed on your face off the screen. So whatever that window was that you closed.
Okay, I'm not going to do anything.
That was the culprit. Don't move.
Okay, so I don't know how far I got into that.
I can still hear it. It sounded kind of funky.
Oh, okay.
And it was getting worse, but to the point it was like, oh, I can barely make it, but you're good now, man.
Cool.
Yeah. So, Suhr guitars, how did you end up with your signature model? Did you play a few Suhrs and go, wow, this is the ultimate telly for me? Or how did it all come about, man?
No, it's not like that at all. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess most important preface this is like, I wasn't out trying to like look for, any kind of signature thing. I've known John and his crew for, I guess, 11 years now. Whatever year they were introducing the modern. At the time, I was playing some Tom Anderson guitars, and I was hungry for a 24 fret model, and Tom didn't offer a 24 fret model. And I was a bit obsessed with Tom's fretwork and his guitar qualities, because if anybody's played an Anderson, they're fabulous. And I saw where John had come out with one, and I knew that John and Tom were buddies, and I was like, well, if he's, I have to check it out. So I went to NAMM and got this brown one. That's it was hanging right there. it must be in a rack somewhere. But yeah, it was the first one that I got, and I got to jam a little bit with Scott Henderson at the NAMM booth. When I picked it up, became friends. But nothing was free or anything like that. Like nobody ever heard of me. I had no career or anything at this time, and I was just starting out with, building my own thing. Getting ready to release my first record, and just kind of played the guitars, loved them, and I bought another one. I bought 2 Suhrs to take on the road and tour. And fast forward 11 years, I've had a good career, been very, very #blessed. And some point, I guess a couple years ago, it was in the middle of that Scott run, transitioning into something else. I can't remember what the next gig was, maybe Flats or whatever. But I wanted a 24 fret telly, and this black one right here. I was hounding them. They're like, we're not interested. I was like, look, build one. Just don't even offer it for sale. Just build me one. So John was like, okay, shut up. We'll build one. And I wanted something that was like that would look good as it wore. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I was like, what about just flat black on like a lightly torched kind of body? Originally, I was like, what about sandblasted? Like, nah, that's not going to look good. No offense to people that sandblast their guitars, but like John was like, eh. So he torched up a body, and he's like, check this out. So it doesn't take off any wood. It just takes off like a little skin. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's still like still feels like a normal guitar. It doesn't feel all like crinkly,
Yep.
And that's it, man. So this one right here, and it's been played so much you can't even see in the camera, that's wore through a little bit on the pick guard. It's had a lot of mileage. And that was the only suhr 24 fret telly for maybe a year and a half or 2 years.
Okay.
And then I came back to
just the whole 24 fret thing. Is that a Gibson scale length
No.
No?
It's Fender scale length. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I've got one in my hands. I just keep talking about that one because it was the first one. So it was the only 24 fret telly for maybe a year. And then John wanted to do a signature. They had some, a new model, a new line, a new kind of image to the branding, I guess you would say. And they wanted to do 4 signature models: one for Scott Henderson, one for Ian Thornley, one for Pete Thorne, and one for myself. And obviously, I was floored. Like, I couldn't even believe I was getting a call. I was like, you don't have to build any more of these. I got the one that I want. Who cares if anybody else gets one? Yeah. And so then we've expanded the line to offer this hardtail, and the ashtray is cut down on the sides so you don't hit your fingers. And cool. Signature model pickups. One of the functions that I wanted was the neck pickup on both models to be so far north into the neck that the neck pickup's in the right place. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yep.
So it actually touches almost touches the fretboard right there. There's no space typically. Yep. And in the back where the heel joint, this was the whole reason for a 24 fret. It wasn't about having a high E. It was about getting rid of the traditional big chunky bad block that was there.
Yeah.
And I loved the heel joint on the modern. And I said, well, can we just do that on a telly? That's where that guy came from. And so they built this one by hand. They fabricated it. So that's the only one that's been completely fabricated. And then they tried to copy it twice, and the balancing wasn't the same. So they came out to we were on tour with Flats. They came out and they measured it, and they're like, oh, here's what's different, about yours. I was like, oh, okay. So on the third one, it was either the third one or the fourth one that was going into the production models. I was like, yeah, that's it. And they're like, yeah, we figured, this was the thing. So since then, it's been extremely successful line. And now there is Mateus Sato, the fabulous Mateus Sato.
He's great.
Is now in that. Yeah, he's incredible. And he's now in that signature pantheon that Suhr has put together. And I still feel like super humbled and like, man, it's like, I can't believe anybody take my ideas and sell them. But it's cool, man. And it's easy to endorse a product that you believe in. Like it never came about to like, hey, we want to build you a signature model, whatever. Like it was the opposite. Like I went to John and I was like, hey, I need this tool. Yeah. Like this is what I need you to do. I want this thing. I love the way these play, but like I want to be I'm a telly player. And then this is a core problem that I don't like with traditional. So like I think the fact that it came out of a very organic place translates to the fact that I'm probably not the only guy on the planet that thinks that about Telecasters. You know what I mean?
Man, just checking out that guitar that you held up. I never picked that it was 24 fret because you don't have the 2 dots at the 24 position.
Another big point. I wanted it to look like a working man's Telecaster from 20 or 30 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So I never picked that. Man, that is like an amalgamation of so many of my guitars. It's not funny. And I'm going to show you just the things that you talked about. The burnt look. And everyone's going to see that I'm still wearing my pajamas right now.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. Pajama time. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is my burnt Strat.
Yeah. Very similar, just kind of takes the skin off, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is something I threw together myself. It was a Fender Highway 1 body that was black, which had a nitro finish over a poly. So I set it on fire with lighter fluid and got that look. So that's the kind of burnt look thing. Sculpting, etc., much like yours. Get something else. This used to be a Fender Richie Kotzen signature model.
Okay.
I say used to be because it was that pukey yellow color, and I ripped the finish off of it. But then your heel joint, look how similar that is.
Yeah,
This used to have that big blocky thing, and I took all the wood out of here and down here as well, almost identical to yours.
Very similar.
Yeah, yeah. And
it's the same kind of thing, right? You know, that's the thing. And I mean, that's if you play a lot of Fenders and you play anywhere up here in the childish region, that block will get in your way and kind of Once you play one of John's moderns, I think those moderns are just ridiculously playable. Like they're just so comfortable. And once you go into that heel joint, it's like, you go back to another heel joint, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah. And then there's one more thing that you brought up, the 24 fret thing. I've been looking for a Strat with a Floyd Rose to use as a working guitar because it just stays in tune so well. And if I break a string, I can put it back on. And a friend gave me this to have a bit of a play with. This is an old Valley Arts.
Yeah.
And I asked about your scale length because you can see on there that's a 24 fret. But it's a Gibson scale length. Unfortunately, it's got a really big, blocky old heel on it. That's why I asked about your scale length, whether it was the same or not.
Man, I like that Fender scale length. I think now don't get me wrong. I've got a PRS. I've got a Collings, like kind of 335 looking rig right there. Over there to the right, there's a Les Paul kind of thing sitting in the chair. But I like different tools. But in general, if I'm playing my music, I want that Fender scale length. I like that snap that the scale length offers. You know,
I'm the same, man. And I bend out of tune on a Gibson. I'm just not a Gibson style player. I've got a Chibson back here that, if I need that Les Paul kind of sound, gets me in that ballpark. But that scale length difference, I bend sharp. On a Gibson. I'm just I
use different string gauge. I use 10s on Les Paul. I use
same
on,
and nines on a Strat. Yeah, same.
I played 11s most of my life because I like the way it feels in the picking hand. But tonally, I like the sound of the low strings and a 40 whatever that is, 44 or 46 or whatever. Yep. I like that snap. I mean, that's just being like, that kind of tone that I like.
Well, man, there's a lot of talk for a long time about heavier strings sounding better. And, I was using 10s. I know guys that use 11s. And I had some issues for a while there with tendonitis in my hands. And I even had a friend give me a set of 8s to try. And I thought, this is going to sound terrible. And it didn't. It sounded fine.
I mean, better when we're talking about guitars, we've got to talk about picks. You got to talk about strings. I mean, just right here. I have several different picks when I'm playing acoustic that have different thicknesses because when I'm doing a strummy part on acoustic, it needs to be different. It's like, it's not a better or worse. It's a different. If you're looking for a sound, it's a different thing. I think you're only going to get a certain sound with certain string gauge. You're only going to get another kind of sound with another string gauge, same with picks, So for me, it's not, I've never really drank the Kool-Aid of if you have light strings, you're going to have bad tone. I mean, Brent played 9s on all the records that I was into, and I mean, God, Eddie Van Halen played 9s, half step down. Yeah. So it's like, you talk about tone, it's like that's those riffs sound huge. You know what I mean? It's physics. It's physics, really. It's a string this big moving this much, or it's a string this big moving this much. Rick Beato just did a nice video on it and talking about it and all that stuff. It's like things change in the mids. You know what I mean? So you got to really. And who knows what the string gauge would sound like on a different amp? You know what I mean? Different dirt pedal. Yeah. Whatever.
Absolutely. Jimmy in the chat room is asking what your main touring guitar is, and I'm assuming it's the brown one you just held up, yeah?
No, that's
that one there.
If I can only take one guitar to the grave, it'll be that one. That one's got more miles on it than anything else. With that said, man, this Collins right here. For a 335 style guitar, that's a fine instrument. And then I think to answer, was it Jimmy? To answer you specifically, it would depend on what the gig is. You know what I mean? If I'm rocking, this little PRS right here, it kills for a pop gig. Maybe that classic antique. for a country gig, either the red and the brown, they're the same guitar, just a different finish.
Yeah.
And it just, it's like if it, but yeah, it depends on the gig. So like anything else, I'm not going to take this guitar to go play metal.
Yeah. So Cameron Brown's saying that the neon pink suhr that Andy has in the background is one of the coolest guitars he's ever seen.
Ha! Yeah, it's a fun one, isn't it? So I told them I told Suhr that I wanted to have the like the Venom kind of drip over top of it.
Cool.
And
that is a cool finish.
Yeah, it's got a Floyd Rose on it, and it's really great. I leave it a half step down. It's really great for rock stuff, and obviously, two Floyds have a sound. Like a guitar with a Floyd sounds a certain way.
Yeah.
And it's like I was doing, for whatever reason, my God, last year it was just like a lot of overdubs for clients that wanted like Neil Sean sounding, like soaring solos, and I was like, man, I gotta have something with Floyd on it to kind of do Neil. I mean, Neil's iconic tones, a lot of times he's playing Floyd, even on his Les Pauls, PRSs and stuff, he always put Floyds on.
Yep. So, what type of Floyd is that? Is that an original, or is that like a
No, it's the Godo.
Yeah.
That's and these are the Wilkinsons. So much love to Wilkinson and Godo for the products they make. They're really good. I like the Godo 510 a lot. That's my tremolo of choice.
Yep.
Wilkinson's just started doing these saddles that are really interesting. I got a set coming in. I'm going to try them out on one of my guitars. It's they fit right on a Godo 510, but you run the string through the body and across the saddle, and then you just lock the string down in place, little Allen key, and it prevents the fulcrum thing that when you dip the bar, and it slides and it goes back, and it's always the G, right? The G's always out of tune. Yeah. So Pete Thorne first. John told me about them, and John Suhr, and I was like, oh, cool, that's cool. And then Pete started using them on his guitar, and I was like, man, I might have to try them. So, yeah, I can't wait to report back in on that. But yeah, the Godo 510, the Godo Floyd, and then the Wilkinsons for the hardtails.
Cool. Pete Thorne was telling me about those when I had him on a couple of weeks ago about that, and he was saying it locks down like on a Floyd Rose. Now, the Godo actually has a brass block as standard, I believe, the Godo Floyd Rose. I've checked out a few different ones.
I have to look.
They are as standard.
I hadn't even when I pull these out of the case. If there's any kind of climate issue, I adjust the neck, maybe a quarter of a turn, not even. But in general, when I pull them out of the case, these guitars travel 2,500 miles, and I don't have to take them apart for anything, man.
Yeah.
Like, I've had that guitar for 6 months, 8 months, and all I've done is change strings on it.
Yeah. I was talking to a really cool guitar builder over here by the name of Charles Cillier, and just discussing getting a Strat built, whether to get the 510 or a Floyd Rose style. And he was the one that said, man, the Godo comes with a brass block as standard, and it's half the price of an original Floyd Rose. And I looked it up and went, damn, you're right, it is too.
It's great too, man. Like, that really starts doing really well.
I did a bit of a shootout with somebody here a couple of years ago. A guy was building brass blocks, and he was saying, making these for Floyd Rose, it's going to improve the sustain. Let's do a test video. I said, man, if you come and pull the guitars apart, we could do the video. I'm not going to spend the day pulling them apart and everything.
Yeah.
And we did a bit of a test to check out the difference in sustain, and there was not a lick of difference in sustain from a brass block. I keep saying blast block.
Well, now they're in the titaniums and stuff too, right now.
But one thing that we both looked at each other and just went, the tone's different. It had a warmer sound by having
with brass.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, somebody's just asked if you're solely an amp man, or whether you delve into digital effects processes like the Axe Effects.
Love them. Yeah. Right here, I've got an Axe Effects 3 in my permanently built into my desk. If you were to turn the camera around, you'd see it. But this little guy right here, I had to do about 200 shows with nothing but that. Mm-hmm. And that was with a modern country act called Low Cash. They had some big record out at the time, and hired me to be on the road with them. And they didn't want any amps on stage. It's getting dangerously popular in Nashville to tour and not have amps on stage. So You know, in my opinion, and nobody can believe me or whatever, but I've played the Kempers and the Helixes and all of them. I think Fractal does what I like.
Cool, cool. I've been down that road myself with all the Helix, Kemper, etc. I had the older generation Axe effects, but I'm hearing now people saying that the Axe 3 is really up there and is the one. And,
you know, for me, it's effects quality too. Jesus, man, their delays and verbs are just like they're playing ball with things like Strymon and Eventide. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, you know, obviously Kemper's pretty limp in that department. Their effects are a lot to be desired for. I think here's the way to look at it, and this is our viewers. This may be a way to look at it. If you are looking for someone's signature tone and they're cooking up the tone and they're going to profile the amp and everything, then sure, the Kemper's great. It's like taking a picture and then you get the picture. But if you're building your own tones and crafting your own sounds, I think nobody touches Fractal in that world. I mean, there's just the flexibility and in the signal chain, the routing, the how you can get into the amp model itself. It's pretty limitless. And I like their editing software. I like their choruses and their pitch shift and all of this stuff that doesn't have to do with emulating the, you know, Deftones White Pony tone or whatever. You know what I mean? But if you are a Kemper user, jump over to Michael Britt's page. I think he's kind of doing Kemper better than everybody else.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, Michael Britt's killing it.
I was touring in a Queen tribute show a few years back, doing a lot of international gigs with that, and I was using the Kemper, and yeah, Michael Britt profiles really did it for me.
Yeah, Britt's great, man. He's a great dude too.
Cool. Also, the AX8 that you just pulled out then, I've seen a lot of touring acts come through my way when I get up, sound check and have a look, and that's what everyone seems to be using these days.
I like it, man. I like how many buttons you can have right on the top. It's like I never ran out of buttons.
Yeah.
Now my flats rig was ridiculous. It had the Diesel and the KSR in stereo with pedal drawer, and then the Axe FX was doing the time-based stuff only, and I had an Access FX1 out front. It just looked like a joke. But at that point, I'm not putting it on the semi. You know, it's like I'm not loading this thing, so I'll just get what I want and use all of it. And the great thing too is like when stuff, you know, blow a tube or whatever, if you got an Axe FX, you just go to a different bank, boom, you're still rolling. You know what I mean? That's kind of nice. So yeah, I mean, like I think there's room in anyone's arsenal and toolkit. It's like, what level are you playing? What are the gigs you're playing? And you know, what do you need, right? Yeah. Like if I'm going to play a small club gig, man, I'll take that little Bella right there and one of those little nano boards with 4 pedals and just go, you know. But if you're doing maybe a worship gig and you need 30,000 different delay times with, you know, stuff, it's like, and that's where Fractal gets really convenient in a hurry.
Yeah. I really do want to check out is it FM3, the new one?
Yeah, it's kind of the Axe FX 3 software in more of a compact thing, kind of about the size of a TC Electronics Nova. You remember those Nova systems? I love those things. I use the Novas for a long time, so I got one sitting right next to me. But cool. The FM3 looks really cool, and the cool thing is I think a lot of the signal stuff, if you build a Fractal patch, as long as it's not exceeding CPU, it can't do 2 amps at the same time, I think, if I'm maybe speaking out of turn. But you can have your patch for Axe 3, and then it'd be the same thing for FM3 and just drag and drop.
Nice. The lack of buttons on it, though, tends to worry me whether just for changing patches and everything, I'm not sure what system they've got there. But I've also got a really cool Rocktron All Access back there that I'm sure I could use as a MIDI controller for it.
I think I've gotten to where I'm using the, you know, so intuitive with just 1 or 2 amp patches on there. It's like kind of gets it done, unless it's something crazy like you said. I mean, you know, a lot of times a gig like Low Cash, man, I had 1 sound all night long. And then I just had a little more delay and a little less delay. Yeah. Maybe a phaser for 2 seconds of something, or a tremolo for 2 seconds of something, but in general, it's just the same sound. Yeah. It's not. I think a top 40 band, you maybe get more use out of something with a lot of buttons on it. You know.
Am I right in thinking you were playing a Synergy rig for a while?
Oh, I've got the Synergy stuff. Yeah,
Synergy,
it's on the top of it's on the top of this rack right here.
Yep.
And I love what they do, man. I've used that plenty of times. I can't decide on which module I like the best. So I keep switching them out. I like them all.
Yeah.
I tell you what really makes that rig pop is props to their power amp. That's a great power amp, dude.
Cool. Designed by Steve Fryette.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. It's like a pedigree design, freaking power amp, and a lot of guys, I think some of those guys from like Animals and stuff are using like an Axe 3 and a Synergy power amp. It's like or Misha or one of those guys are. Can't remember. Misha kind of cycles a lot of gear.
Yeah, as you do.
As one does.
Yeah, it's something I've really wanted to get into is the world of the Synergy gear. Beside me here, I've got an old 80A preamp and a Marshall JMP1.
I was spying that, dude. When you got up and showed the world your pajamas, I was checking out that 80A. What is that, an old JMP1? Is that what
it is? It is.
Yeah.
I got my plate full at the moment.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah, I got my plate full at the moment making some videos for a cable company for their website, but I've been threatening to do a comparison video when I get some time to myself between those two. Because back in the 90s, I was an ADA guy, and it was all about the MIDI switching for me.
Yeah.
But, once I started getting into more boutique amps, I was a Friedman small box guy for a long time. And
it's great amp.
Then I went back and fired up one of these and thought, oh, that doesn't sound as good as what I remembered back in the 90s. I guess I just didn't know a good amp. And you go back to those, and who was I talking to last week?
It's a unique voice, though. That's the thing, is like, I would still find room for that in a session thing. You start layering a bunch of guitars, maybe you want something that's a little pokey or narrow or whatever. Again, it kind of turns into like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what are you making? What kind of art are you making to require it? But yeah, you talk about those Friedman amps, boy, Dave knows what he's doing. That's a good amp.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But I'd really like to do a comparison with the JMP1, because that was the other big thing that people were using back in the 90s. And I never got the chance to A/B them. So I'm just going to set them all with everything set to 5 and see how that sounds. And then, you can find the patches everywhere online that Michael Wagner used on all the classic heavy rock albums, all the Nuno stuff, and dial in that patch and see how that sounds by today's standards. Yeah.
Yeah, I think yet again it goes, you got to have a really great power amp to put that stuff through to get it to like push air. You know what I mean? I guess you got, what is that, a Fry it back there?
Yeah, I got a, speaking of Fry, that's a power station.
Yeah,
that thing kicks, man.
His stuff's, man, Steve's great, man. That guy's killed.
I was using that as a reactive load box, but when I want to go stereo live, I'll drag that along as my secondary power amp and
slave it out.
Yeah. Do you run stereo?
I do. I like it. It depends. Again, it always depends on the gig, and am I the one carrying it in, or if I got a cartage company. But in general, man, these little Bellas, I got 2 of those little combos, and boy, they rule, dude. They're real good.
Yeah,
real good.
I'll have to try one out. So when
if you like a bassman, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
If you like a bassman, it's really good.
Yeah.
And if you expect to plug into it and it be a dual rectifier, it sucks.
Yeah, sure. So if you're running something like that, you're using gain pedals in front of that. You talked about stacking all your gains and everything. Yeah.
I've been working with Brian Wampler to develop a pedal.
Nice.
I love Brian's overdrives for many years. 95% of Junktown, the record, is that's a bit far-fetched. I'd say about 80%, 85% of Junktown is the prototype pedal that Brian built for me, and we'll be going into manufacturing hopefully within the next 6 months. Hopefully sooner than that, but C-Virus kind of put the brakes on everything.
Yeah.
And a big secret, not a secret, but a big thing that I like to do is set a compressor barely on kind of thing. By barely on, I mean barely compressing, but maybe like a 4 or 5 dB bump before it comes into something else, right? So anything with that, like not a 1-to-1 compression ratio, but just slightly above, you know, that gets like really very musical to me, because it kind of replicates the idea of a 50-watt amp that's just roaring, you know what I mean, without having to have the amp roaring. And my compressor settings, people always are asking me about how I set compressors, it depends on how loud your amp is, right? Because if your amp is really loud and it's 100 watt or 50 watt or 20 watt or whatever, and it's roaring, it's compressing. So I lean more towards the 1-to-1 compression ratio, where it's not compressing at all.
Yep.
But if the amp is softer, as the amp is softer, the ratio is higher. And then I'm kind of doing this thing.
Cool. So you mentioned Brian Wampler. I had one of his, forget what the compressor model was called, but it had a blend knob, so you could essentially Ego. That was the one. Yeah. So you could essentially run parallel compression. Is that something that you mess with when you're talking compressors?
Yeah. Suhr worked with me, kind of got my thoughts as well as the other guys too. No, it's not just me thing, but other guys when they were doing Koji, and I thought that parallel compression thing is really cool. However, there is something to be said about a pedal. One of my favorite compressors, everybody knows it all time, is the Carl Martin compressor. That is one of my favorite compressors, and there's something to be said about the signal passing through all the time and then adjusting the ratio. It does a different thing, and I don't like the term better or worse, but it's just different, you know. And Carl Martin's, God, that's a good compressor, man.
Yeah.
And the only problem is they're just like tanks. They're huge. And two, it's like they use weird vernacular, like on the what they call it. It's like response. It's like, what the hell is that? You know, it's not even a term when you're talking about compression. Yeah. You know, with compression, it's threshold, ratio, and gain. Like that's what does stuff. You know. But anyways, it's off the point. But yeah, man, I think a great compressor pedal, getting that to do a lot of the heavy lifting will eliminate a lot of buzz and fuzzy, fizzy stuff out of your gain, but still allow it to be silky and singing and soaring, kind of sustain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So when you're running the two Suhr Bellas in stereo, are you using any kind of trickery to use the preamps individually, or do you just set them so they're the same?
I just earball it.
Yeah.
There's only 3 knobs on it. That's why I like it.
Okay. It's one of those simple amps
like
that just sounds good.
Yeah, it's like a simple Fender style circuit where it's like volume, treble, bass, presence.
Yeah.
You know, and also when I'm in stereo, one of the things I like for me is having a little bit of difference, just a little bit. Maybe one's a little tubbier than the other. And then I get my signal split with whatever time-based stuff. Like I'm super in love with the Wampler Terraform and the Strymon Timeline. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 fantastic pedals. And then I start splitting at the Terraform, and then the rest of my signal chain is left and right from there.
Cool. Man, there's got to be something said about amps that are just simple, that just sound good, that you don't have to go in there messing with this and that.
Core tone, man. Yeah. Core fundamental tone. Is your guitar good? Does the amplifier sound good? Don't do a lot of stuff to it. If you don't like those things, change one of those things. I see guys spend thousands of dollars, on like pedal boards or effects or something to like change something to like turn into it, a 50-watt Marshall. I was like, just buy a 50-watt Marshall.
Exactly. Now, talking about keeping things simple, the wiring of your guitars, do you have anything fancy going on in there? Yep.
Yeah, there's a little bit of trickery. Obviously, with something like this is no nonsense. 3-way single coils. I call them hot dog pickups. These are hot dogs. I got hamburgers in these other ones. When I use any of these 4 right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, that all have 2 humbuckers, I go bridge humbucker. Then I have a push pull that will take the bridge humbucker into series parallel. It's not splitting it. Yeah. It's series parallel. Right.
Cool.
Then from there, the next one, it's a 5-way blade. The next one is the 2 inside coils, kind of fakes a Knopfler Strat kind of tone.
Yep.
Then the next one over is both hamburgers on full. I call that the full Grill Masters tone right there. And then the next one over is interesting because I like just the neckmost coil. So like single coil Strat faking. And then the next one over is the full humbucker. And then when I use a Strat, the only weird thing I do is my tone. I have one of those tone knobs that is for only the bridge pickup, so I can do my pretend like I'm Eric Johnson.
Cool. That's sometimes the switching can get a bit complicated on some guitars, and you're like, whoa, what's that actually doing? You got to sit there and tap things and go, what have I got there? But you're different for every guitar by the sounds of things.
Yeah, see, again, it's going back to like I want the guitar to tell me what it wants. I've got an old Anderson in a case over there. It's a great guitar, drop top. It's got the switcheroo on it. That's a great studio guitar, Yeah. But live, it's like there's so many freaking switches that you may not get to the right position that you want.
Yeah.
So,
Andy, I wanted to talk about your picking for a bit there, man, because that's something that you're great. Is just your alternate picking, and you said you started out alternate picking most things because that's what's done on a mandolin. Have you picked up other techniques since switching to guitar? You said you noticed that these guys were doing things and you go, hang on, you're not doing that.
Yeah, it's like if I've got like I learned a lot of legato stuff from Tom Quill. That kind of thing, arpeggiating things out in that way. But the picking thing is kind of like my bread and butter on how I like to get around the guitar, But yeah, I mean, like some tapping and sweeping, you have fun with all of it.
And how low do you have your action on your guitar? Do you have it super low, or would people be surprised?
In my opinion, I think it's low, but then I'll play like Ben Eller's guitar, and I'm like, I can't even play it so low. There's like those. I was surprised at how low Timmons kept his actions, very low.
Really?
I consider myself low. Yeah, it'd be low action.
Yeah,
it's not like laying on the fretboard.
Yeah,
it's not like 1/32. You know what I mean? It's not nothing ridiculous like that.
Yeah,
I would say it's about the low E string is maybe a little bit smaller than a 1.5 millimeter.
Okay,
maybe just a touch, a touch.
And
it's easy to play. It's easy to play.
And do you mess with like the relief truss rod wise? Do you like a dead straight
I like
neck?
It flat. I mean, like I like flat fingerboard radiuses. Mine's a 16 on all mine. And the reason is it wasn't. It feels like a mandolin. Mandolins have flat fretboards.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm always looking for like familiarity. When I grab something.
Yep.
Yeah.
And no.
Too, those old dreadnoughts, they had pretty flat fretboards too.
Yeah. Yeah. But not much relief. You like it sort of
pretty straight. Pretty straight with big old frets.
Yeah. Big frets. Yeah. Yeah. I gravitated towards
getting under, especially, for like the big, those big bends and stuff, step and a half kind of bends.
Yeah.
Like that.
Awesome. Got any dream guitars that you want to get your hands on?
Oh man, this is funny. I've always had this story. You ever seen the movie with Nicolas Cage? It's a remake, but it's called Gone in 60 Seconds. You ever seen that movie?
I haven't seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
Okay, in the movie, Nick Cage can steal any car, right? No problem, any car. And there's this one old Mustang. It's a '67 Mustang. Every time he tries to steal that model of car, something bad happens. Like he can never steal that car. It's like that's kind of like a joke within the movie. So I've got that same thing with Les Pauls, right? I've always wanted obviously I'd love an old 59 burst, but even if it's just a replica, like some of those R9s are nice, something that just like replicated really great Les Paul, specifically in lemon burst, right? With that like cream colored pick guard and the nickel covers on the pickups, right?
Yep.
And like old, I wanted it to be like a 59, right? Every time I've had the money to drop, and I'm willing to drop, $8,000, like that's going to be in the ballpark to get you a nice one, $7,000, right? Every time I've had the money, I can never find it. Okay. I was had making a lot of money out on the road. And like, I was like, oh man, hitting every guitar shop. Yep. And I don't like to order something like that. At the time Gibson, and this was, 4 or 5 years ago, at the time, Gibson wasn't building the most consistent of guitars. I think they're doing a lot better now. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but at the time, no secret in the guitar community. That's why the dude got fired. But at the time, I was like, I'm not going to order one because it could come in and be dead. Like it had dead spot. It's like, I'm not going to risk it. Not with that kind of cheddar. Couldn't find it. Every time I don't have the money, I can always find it. I can always like if I don't have the money to get the Les Paul, I can always find it. It'll be the first one hanging in Guitar Center and I pick it up, and it's exactly what I want. And this has happened at least 5 times, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So now it's like it's always been this wave back and forth. So now, it's like I'm back up. The career's going good and stuff, and I've been kind of sniffing around. There's a couple of things that I'd like to have. Specifically, there's a buddy of mine's got one of Eric Johnson's personal Marshalls that was used on like Venus Isle or something.
Oh, nice.
And I got to use that. I got to use that Marshall on my Eric Johnson tribute back to Austin. So like on my radar to buy is a perfectly unmolested 100-watt plexi. Like don't want one with, I'm like the anti-mod guy because they've all been they've all been dug through, right? That and a lemon burst Les Paul. And I feel like I'm like Nick Cage trying to get that Les Paul. Like every time I find one, can't afford it. It's like every time I can afford it, I can never find that freaking thing. So, yeah. So
when you say 100-watt plexi, like plexi's pretty broad. Is there a particular Marshall that you want?
Like a particular year? The 68, 69, what was the super lead,
Super lead, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the one, like the EJ, that one.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was like when I played it, I was like, oh my God, this thing can do so many things. And I was like, wanted to know what was up with it. Like what mod did it have? It's like, had nothing. It had no mods. And, I think it's cool. I think there's some cool amps out there that do the hot rodded Marshall thing, the Jose mods and all that Mythos and all this stuff is cool. But like, there's a million amps in this room that can do, they can do that kind of thing. Or you get a Friedman. Like if I wanted a hot rodded Marshall, I'd just get a BE or an HB8 and call it, Steve Stevens amp. Like, man, that Steve Stevens Friedman is incredible.
Man, yeah.
It's my favorite one out of the lot. Like
Me
out
too.
of all the Friedmans, I'd get the Steve Stevens one.
Me too. Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't want that kind of era of plexi to hot rod it up to get it to do that. You know what I mean? I would just call Mike Saldano and just be like, hey man, I want a SLO 100. Like get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like for that Marshall, that magic Marshall sound, whether it be a 50-watt or 100-watt, it's like that sound to me is not one that's like loaded with gain and saturation. It's just got bark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that would be one. I'm actually very fortunate. I own one of my dream amps. I can't turn the camera, but right next to me, right here, is a 1963 pre-CBS deluxe reverb, and it is mint. And I paid way too much for it, but when I got it, it had the original hang tag from 1963 for $400.
No. Wow.
Yeah, dude bought it, kept it in his closet. And I just told him, he said, I know I've got a very expensive amp. I was like, name your price. Like, I'm going to buy it from you.
Yeah.
Name your price.
Yeah.
And I ended up paying like, it was a fortune, man. This was like 99, 2000. And I was a kid, but I was working in that theater, and I didn't have a mortgage. You know what I mean? Like I could just buy what I wanted. Yeah. So I saved up all my money, and I think I ended up paying a ton for it, like $3,400, $3,300. But dude, it's mint. Like it's beautiful.
So when you do session work, are you doing it from home and using all this gear that you've got at home?
Yeah, these days I'm doing a lot of it from home. I'll still go to a studio if somebody has to have it. Like it was a fun session I did this year. Is Jay DeMarcus? He's been doing these movie scores. I went down to his place. He's got a great studio. But I do so much overdub work from the house. I really love the UA aux, and I just plug whatever I want to into that. Let it eat.
So when you're using the aux, are you using that for speaker simulation, or do you mic your cabs at home?
Man, I'll tell you what. I've tried to mic my cabs, and I can't get them to get it sound as good as the aux.
Yeah. I got to say,
I use the aux on Junktown. Like the whole record of Junktown is the aux.
Yeah. So
every time I'd go mic up and like use a Royer and a 57, it's like, yeah, it sounded great.
Yep.
But it's like I could just do it in the aux and have it saved. And dude, it was freaky close.
Speaker IRs are incredible, man.
Yeah, we're living in the future, man. We're living with the Jetsons.
Totally. I had a few months ago now a guitar player named Bob Spencer, who's an Australian guy, and he plays for an Australian group called Roast Tattoo, which was a big thing from 70s, 80s. And he sent me his solo album to have a listen to. And as soon as it came on my NS10s here, the guitar sound that opened, I was like, whoa, man, I could touch that. It was just sitting just in front of the speaker, the mid-range and everything. And when I quizzed him, he said, man, it's my classic amp head into a load box and speaker IRs. And yeah, it's tried all the old stuff. You had got all digital emulations, analog emulations, but speaker IRs, man, that is, like you said, living in the future.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. And I'm not opposed to the technology moving forward. However, I mean, if we're going to go full nerd and I've got a guy like, Rasky Lennox or a Dan Huff or some freakishly great producer turning the knobs on an API console and my favorite mics, and I'm in Blackbird in Nashville. It's like you build me a $100,000 signal chain. I'll take that $100,000 signal chain. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to do that in your home, I mean, like just to buy a bunch of API pre's and a bunch of mics, and then you have to soundproof. You have to dedicate even more of your house. Like, I mean, I've dedicated so much of this house to like my thing. It's like now I've got to dedicate even more to and it just keeps going further and further back. Every room just, so it's like, man. And then at that point, it's like the upkeep on it, it's like, gosh, mighty. And you're telling me for $1,400, I can call Universal Audio, get this devil box that they made. And I mean, and James Santiago's a big guy, big force behind the aux, and that guy's got golden ears,
Yeah, right.
So it's like, I'm a big fan of where technology is, And
I guess with something like the aux, you actually get to wind up the amps. Like, imagine trying to do that at home, getting a 100 or a 50 watt head and turning it up to where it's really starting to breathe to hear that difference between a 50 and a 100, the way the...
Oh, I mean, dude, if you'd have had that Marshall, that EJ Marshall we recorded that song with, that Back to Austin tune, if you'd have had that thing on a cabinet, it'd blow you into next week, man.
Yeah.
It was roaring. But
Yeah.
I mean, you could tame it and put a leash on it. And also, man, more props to Suhr family. John and his son Kevin have put a lot of R&D into that reactive load, and that is a fantastic. If I'm gonna nitpick, I would actually wish that was the reactive load that was in the aux, or the aux's software was with that reactive load.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, I like that reactive load the best, but I like the aux's software and UA's goop. Man, like UA just puts in that goop on the software side. I don't know what kind of chickens and goats they're sacrificing with their mojo devil rituals to get their, software to sound so good. But that's where I think the aux shines over other things. With that said, man, this little Rev thing's got a 2 notes in it, and 2 notes builds great stuff. I mean, I'm definitely not taking a crap on anybody else's product. Like, everybody's, and I think right now that's something to point out. We, the consumer, we, the player, we, the artist, we're the ones that are winning when these guys get into like pissing matches with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, you get a John Suhr going against a 2 notes and a Universal Audio, the person that's going to win is going to be the player.
Yeah. Yeah. Great way to look at it.
That's the way we should all look at it.
Yeah.
I see these guys on Facebook groups and stuff, bickering and arguing over, which one sounds 0.4% better. I'm like, hey man, look, you can plug into all of them and they all sound great. Like, that's the world we live in. That's amazing.
So I've been using the 2 notes wall of sound plugin for a while in Pro Tools, and I haven't played with the aux, so I'm not too familiar with how it's all laid out. But it comes with its own speaker IRs that are...
Yeah, so this is how I'd describe it. The aux is the 2 notes in the IR thing, whether it be an fractal or any other IR. It's like, again, it's more on that like taking a picture kind of thing, where the aux allows you to create your own IR within it. Like, you can put the software thing, instead of the window on your computer, you can put it on your iPad.
Cool.
And operate the aux from your iPad.
Yep.
And with that, it gives you 3 virtual faders, if you're ever familiar with the way Universal Audio's layouts look. And then you can see a little open window of the room that the cabinet's in. You can take a rug in and out. You can change all these variables within the room. You can change the mic placement. You can change the angle. And if you've been in a real studio and you spent all that time knowing your favorite mic combinations, your favorite room stereo condensers, or whatever you like, you can do it. And you don't have to go online to find the IR. And that's a huge thing for me. Like, with literally all of the other competition, you have to go find the IR you're after.
Sure.
Whereas with the Universal Audio, you just make it.
Yeah, right. Cool. So the 2 notes has a similar thing where you can move the mic around, but not as far as throwing in different carpets and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, literally, that's insane to me.
Absolutely, man. Wow.
And yeah, I mean, if anybody's ever messed with Universal Audio's like reverbs and room emulations and stuff, like these guys do not mess around. This is not like a joke to them. It's not a game.
Yeah.
So when like they're like, hey, what does it sound like when a rug is under a cabinet? Like they've obsessed over it. You know, these are a bunch of mega engineers and that are losing sleep over this thing. So it's like I really respect that level of detail. It's very much like, you know, I guess in comparison it'd be like, are you buying a Mustang from the Ford dealership, or are you going to go to Italy and pick out your Lamborghini? It's they're both fine. They'll both get you there, but one has got a lot more R&D and a lot more time in it, you know.
Cool. So, folks, if you've got any questions for Andy, throw them into the chat room now. Start working through some there because I don't want to keep him for too long. But somebody has asked, it was Jimmy again, what you've got in store for the future after COVID, and I'm going to just walk away for 30 seconds as you start to answer that one.
Yeah, man. So the COVID world has been really, really interesting. All of us trying to find our way through it. The thing that is on the immediate horizon is that guitar camp. So if you're in the North America, if you're in the continental United States, we've got the Woodshed Guitar Experience. The VIP unfortunately is sold out. There's a waiting list for that, but we do have general admission left. I'm not sure how many slots we have left, but there are general admission slots available. And that is for the 3-day event that we're having with Mr. Joe Bonamassa, Andy Timmons, Brent Mason, Greg Koch, Mark Lettieri, and myself. As far as after that, you know, I don't know how long we're going to be allowed to, you know, how long it's going to be before we get to play shows. So I guess just being completely transparent, I don't know how to answer that because I don't know when we're going to be allowed to do whatever. But that said, I've got the next AW solo record at least laid out. I've picked out my demos, and then I've got the next Kennedy Wood Band laid out, and I've got those to Dave. For those that aren't aware, Kennedy Wood Band is a southern rock kind of country thing.
Andy, your audio's starting to mess out again, man.
No.
Did you change anything?
I didn't change anything.
No.
Didn't change anything. Do I need to?
These definitely aren't the droids I'm looking for. Let's see what happened there. Man, that's some great players you got at this camp.
One second. Let me see if this. Tell me if I fix it.
I am hearing that link. I just brought that to his attention, mate. We had that issue a little earlier and we got around it. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Now I don't have anything from you, mate. You're right. Man, that's some players. Joe Bonamassa, Andy Timmons, I think you said Greg Koch.
How about now, my boy?
Yeah, he's still got that distortion going on.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay, what about now?
Yeah, still the same. I know I joked about it, but do you want to try turning it off and turning it back on again and Skyping me back in? See if that fixes it.
Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah? I'll do a song and a dance for everybody in the meantime. But that's why people tune into the live. In the meantime, folks, while Andy is troubleshooting that, if you've got any questions there, shoot.
Am I still a droid?
Yeah. It just sounds like you got a ring modulator going on. No sound now. I'm just scrolling through the questions.
Am I a droid now?
No, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, basically whatever's happening is Skype doesn't like me to be on this aggregated device for more than an hour.
Yeah. As I mentioned, man, Skype seems to be the big issue I'm having. And if the folks at Ecamm don't get something else going on, so I can bypass Skype effectively, then I'm going to have to jump ship and try StreamYard or something like that.
Yeah. So I guess what I was saying is like, without knowing when they're gonna let COVID. It's like without a COVID cure, we don't really know like what's next. But I have my next AW solo record written and laid out, and my demos at least chosen that I'm gonna polish, and then I've got the next Kennedy Wood Band. All of the stuff for it. For those that don't know Kennedy Wood Band, you can check that out. Spotify, YouTube, whatever. It's kind of a Southern rock country kind of thing. Dave Kennedy is the Kennedy in Kennedy Wood. He was on one of those. It wasn't American Idol, but he was on one of those. And he is actually a Warner Brothers published writer in Nashville. So we've been friends for a long time through a project together, and it's pretty fun. And it's been doing its thing. So I figured go ahead and write those next records and have them ready to go.
So with those records, are you just going to track them at home? Everybody has their own home studio. Is that how that all works?
Not really. We'll do the drums at a big studio.
Yep. And what's your preferred studio? You mentioned Blackbird Studios earlier. I mean, these kinds of places I read about and I dream about.
Well, they're all going out of business, it feels like.
Yeah. It's been happening for a while, though. All the big studios. It's been happening for a while. All the big studios,
over the past 15 years.
Yeah. And do you have a preferred studio?
I don't really have I don't have a dream studio. It's more about people. You know, I have guys that I prefer to work with.
And who's that? Who's your preferred guys?
Oh man. I mean, if Dan Huff's watching, hey Dan, I'd love to work with you. My phone hasn't rang yet, but I bet you've just lost my number. That's all. Dan would be a dream guy. Out of guys that I know, I mean, like I love working with all the guys that I know, man. I love working with Travis Toy. He's a great steel player. I love working with Travis Wyrick. There's a guy named Evan who goes by Turbo. There's a fabulous engineer named Nick Lane in Nashville that I've worked with, and man, there just seems like there's so many talented guys, and I guess at the risk of sounding like a jerk, I'm going to say this: I'm going to produce the Kennedy Wood and the A Wood stuff like I want. You know what I mean? It's like I don't need a producer. Like I'm going to do it myself. And that probably makes me sound like a jerk, but I really like a great engineer and a great team around me that like knows that what we're going to go for. And two, it's like I get in there with Dave or something that I'm in control of. I'm not working for somebody else. Like Dave's such a great singer. Like I just want to get in there and have him sing the song 4 times and then just cherry pick it. Like he's just a great singer. He's got that Stapleton kind of thing. And when he does these amazing rolls and these ad libs and things, it's just like, I just want to let him do his thing and not chop and dice it. I'm really looking to capture organic moments, especially these days. I
guess having done so much session work as you have and working with great producers, you pick up all that stuff and you kind of pushes them out of the picture a bit, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it does and it doesn't because, it's almost like you got them rooting for you. They know that you're not a direct competitor. I'm not going to be, it's that being on that kind of level is not where I'm aiming my efforts. So it's like, hell, half the time those guys, it's like a guy like Travis Wyrick will just loan me a studio. Hey man, turn the lights off. Don't blow my stuff up. It's like pay for you pay the engineers or whatever and do what you want. But it's like, on the flip side, it's like he knows that I'll probably see him next week and cut some mandolin for him or whatever. It's like it's definitely not a competitive type of thing. There's so much resource in the world and there's so much music out there. And I like to say that there's so many low hanging fruits that we can all win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, Jimmy wants to know which DAW you use to record with. Are you a Pro Tools guy, Logic guy?
I use Logic.
You use Logic. Okay.
I do, man. It's like, I'm not in there mixing full records. Yet again, it's like I know my role. And I think that's what's really important when you're choosing a DAW to work with. If you're tracking all day, use something you can track quick with. If you are mixing, then you're going to need Pro Tools or maybe Luna or something. It's like you're going to need more horsepower to do crazier things, depending on the plugins. Like that's another thing. What plugins are you using? What are you doing? And when I record guitar, I go in straight dry, no nothing, and then let my engineer put things where he wants to put them,
So when you say you're recording straight dry, that's through the aux, right?
Yeah, I don't mean DI. I am recording an amp with the core tone. It's just like if there's some kind of time-based effect, I'll probably do that post.
Yeah. So are you like playing back the track and then experimenting with different cabs and things along the way to see what fits into the mix before you put it in?
I don't do that. No.
No?
I listen to the song and play along with the song while I flip through my options, while I plug in my heads and stuff. Because I think it's really important, again, to like try to capture a vibe and try to capture something organic. I know when I'm playing the amp, it's going to feel different and I'm going to play to it differently.
Yeah.
And like, if you just flip through presets after you've tracked it, you're not really doing that at all. You're playing to one specific amp and then you're faking the back end of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't like that. It's like maybe it would change the way I phrased a bend. It could be changing a bend to a slide. Like those type of decisions that happen intuitively happen if I'm playing a Fender amp or a Diesel or whatever. It's like I know how to play to the amp.
Yep.
So I don't like to do it that way. I don't like to do it post.
Sure. I meant more tweaking with the cab before you start recording, but
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. But you've said there that you run through all the different heads rather than different cabs.
So same way with the cabs. Same way with the cab simulations.
Yep.
And if I'm using cabs or IR, Axe effects or whatever, playing to a IR even that is emulating a classic lead 80 is going to create a different response to the instrument than an IR that's emulating a tweed cabinet. Yeah. So again, it's like I want to do all that on the front end when I print, when I'm printing the performance, because I want the guitar to feel and tell me what to play a certain way.
And is there a certain cab IR that you find tends to work most of the time for you, or do you go through a whole bunch of things?
I know families, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there's families of cabinets. A very iconic sound is like those old blue Alnicos, Another very iconic sound would be a small 112 emulation of like a little deluxe or something. Yep. And then when you get into the 412s, you can really get into like obsessing over negative return. Like you get 47 different red wires and on-hammer versions of the same rectifier cabinet. It's like, man, you're really, at that point, you need to just pick a different guitar if you're worried about 4.4% of some kind of difference in an IR. You kind of just know if you're going for a 412. Like, here's my 412 families that my ear associates with. Greenback family. And by that, I would put a 65, those G12 65s. Mm-hmm. I would put them in that family. Yeah. They, you know what I mean? Because they sound like it, but they just have more, they don't break up. Then I would have a vintage 30 family of speakers, right? Then I would have the 75 watt family of speakers. Then I would have the classic lead 80 family, and then the EV12L family. And everything tends to be an offshoot of that. You know what I mean? Yep. Like those Soldano IRs and those Soldano cabinets with those old V Soldano speakers, whatever they were called. They sound like EV12Ls to me. They're like in that family. You know what I mean? Yep. And usually when I hear a song that a client wants me to play on, I'll know within 2 seconds, like of the track starting, what family's gonna work.
Really cool.
Oh yeah,
cool. And do you think having that technology of something like the aux and going through all those different families of speakers has helped you to recognize that, or is this something you had from years of experience beforehand? It's
more the experience beforehand. Yeah. I know exactly what I'm going for, and the aux lets me get there really fast.
Yeah.
Not to say that I can't do it in the Axe Effects. One of my favorite features on the Axe Effects is the little green pin, the little thumbnail.
Yeah.
That when you click the cabinet IRs, instead of closing and opening, it'll just keep the thing open. I can just be like, I don't want the vintage 30 thing, or don't want the 65 thing, or don't want the classic lead 80 thing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like it comes from having, Mesa cabs and Diesel cabs. Like I know what these things do. You know what I mean? And I know like this one's got 65s in it. This 412 has lead 80s in it. That one's got some kind of like greenback. No, that may have 65s in it. I have to look in it. This has got an Eminence thing in it. That's got some. I mean, like they've all got different stuff in them, and you can just put that EVH head or a Diesel on all of them, and you'll hear all these tonal differences. Like people underestimate the power of speaker when it comes to shaping your tone.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the final filter of the
And
sound,
it's a
really, isn't it?
big one.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a big filter.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not going to talk about that live. Do you find yourself on stage wanting to hear slightly different speaker cab than what you'd want to feed out front? And like, do you use speaker IRs to be able to accomplish that? Like,
I mean,
and,
it would go into like who's my band.
Yeah.
Because if I have Lester Estelle on drums versus Jim Riley on drums versus Andy Campbell on drums, they all sound different.
Yeah. An example of that for me.
They're all great drummers, you know, and it's like that. You give me a different drummer, that's going to change like what the low end is fundamentally going to do on stage. You know, in general, live, I will probably play a classic lead 80 in general, or a Celestion 65.
Cool. I had 2 Port City cabs for about 10 years, and I loved the thunder of the low end of those, the oversized 2x12s, but they just didn't sound the same mic'd up. I think because of that whole porting thing, a lot of the goodness came out the ports. And I mean, seriously, what engineer that you just rock up for a one-off gig is going to go, yeah, I'll mic up your port and everything? They just look at you and go, no, you're getting one mic, man. Yeah. So when I was running a Kemper with those, it was a very different kind of speaker sound that was being fed to the front of house. But I did love hearing that thunder on stage and feeling it rumble.
Yeah, I get that. Like low end's interesting, right? Like playing on open backs or 412s or whatever. It's always interesting. A lot of times these days, you know, you'd be surprised. Like the louder I get, the less low end is in my tone.
Oh yeah,
yeah, for sure. Like it just doesn't sound good when you get these standing waves. You know what I mean? That like a 412 on a hollow stage that's on a, like, let's paint a picture, right? Like, I think to answer a lot of these questions, we got to paint a picture and paint an environment. So like, let's say a 600 person club. I can imagine that stage being what, 20 by whatever, you know, let's ballpark it. And then from there, she's probably 7 feet off the deck of the ground ish, 7-8 feet. Man, probably subs are under that or right in front of it. Then a kick drum, it just roars because the front of house guy is going to get that kick drum louder than everything, right? Then you add in your bass, and then by the time the guitar comes in, if you've got all this low end, you're just gone. Like you just don't exist in the mix. So I like to compensate that kind of thing with like more punch. Like I'll roll the low end out and use a darker speaker to, you know, to where the it's not shrill and painful. Like that's the interesting thing is like guys will use a bunch of vintage 30s and dual rectos and have to have the low end because immediately when the low end's gone, it's like a buzzsaw, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So if anybody's ever looked at Andy Timmons amp settings, the low end's almost off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really, yeah. It's like Joe Bonamassa's twins, you know, those high-powered twins that he loves, those tweed ones. Like he has volume, middle, treble maxed out, bass almost off. Like bass is like below one or below, and he's got one of the darkest tones I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
You know, but it's just knowing what gear you're using and how it reacts at different volumes, and like what you're sitting it on. You know what I mean? Like Joe plays on average, I'd say a 3,000 person room. Those stages have a certain frequency range. I know I'm jumping way down the rabbit hole, but this is just what I've seen on my life from playing arenas to like playing clubs, you know?
Yeah.
And when I play my own shows, I'm not playing arenas. You know, it's like Andy Wood shows plays, you know, 500 person club, you know, 200 person club, something like that.
That really goes back to what you said earlier about listening just to the guitar tracks on, say, a Motley Crue record and how the guitars are this small, but in the context of everything, it just sounds freaking huge. Yeah.
Yeah. You like thinking about sound and tone is like a great analogy. Like you only got so many Legos, right? You can build them tall here, you can build them tall here, but you can't build them tall everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of it as, you know, there's the speaker, you can only fit so much in through that hole. So
Yeah.
take out what doesn't need to be there. I see a lot of guys, and that's something I learned working in studios with people over the years, is pulling out what doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, that's right.
Is so much going to make the sound so much better than trying to add
Don't
a
ever
whole
add.
bunch of shit
Don't
to
ever
try,
add.
to try and to mask
If
it.
you need to cut through the mix, I would say this would be like, if I'm so narcissistic and egotistical to think that my opinion matters, this is what I would advise. When you need to cut through the mix, don't add mids, don't add treble, don't add presence. Cut your low end.
Mm-hmm.
Roll up your volume to compensate, because when you cut that low end, that's a ton of your volume output.
Yeah.
So when you cut the low end out, you're going to feel your signal drop, pull your master volume up to bring your signal back to where it was, and now you're going to cut through like a hot knife.
And you won't be fighting with the bass guitar for space. Yeah.
That bass and that kick drum, I don't know a single front of house guy on the planet that's not going to put the kick drum at the number one thing that he mixes first outside of vocals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny in this day and age now, you said about sitting in with great producers and engineers and being a sponge and just going, oh, what'd you do there? What'd you do there? I guess you're in a very fortunate location to be able to do that with some top guys. I grew up with no one really around here that was of that quality. And since the whole YouTube and the internet came along, I used to think, man, if only I had the money to be able to pay Andy Wallace to mix a song for me and sit there and pick his brain. Well, now, you know what? It's online and you can pay not that much.
Andy's got all his stuff, all the Lord Algae guys.
It's all there. And to see what they're doing. Bob Power was somebody that I had some records of that I go, man, this sounds great. Who's this? Bob Power. And then I saw an interview with him recently. He's just talking about pulling out things. A high and low pass, so he takes out the low end, the high end that doesn't need to be there. And then he said a great thing. Every instrument has a resonant frequency. Try and find where that resonant frequency is. Pull that out. And
same guitar right here, and they both have a different resonant frequency.
Yep. And he was pulling out that dominant resonant frequency on everything and then turning it up, and then all of a sudden it just sat in the mix. So I tell people who go on about, I need this plug-in, I need that plug-in, that one of the number one tools for me is an EQ where you can solo the bands. And the stock DigiDesign EQ3 does it. I think it's shift and control you hold down and then move your band and it'll solo that band. And when you go through and then all of a sudden, whoo, it really takes off. Pull that fucker out, get rid of the extreme low and high end, and bring that in. And then all of a sudden, that instrument is just going to sit in there like you wouldn't believe.
Here's a pro tip, I guess I would say. I feel like I've got enough experience.
Oh, please do. That was my next thing. I was going to hit you up on tips that you've picked up along the way.
This one's for my fractal users. When you pull up an amp model, don't EQ it with the bass, middle, and treble knobs on the amp model. Mm-hmm. I feel like where I control my high end is in the parametric, like get a para EQ. When you pull up the stock fractal EQ, it'll have it like type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5. I go to type 5 and I change it to just a hard shelf, like just like chops it off. That's how I control my top end. And then I can go into the amp model and crank the crap out of the treble.
Cool.
Right? So it's taking everything that's that digital high ends, because like an amp in real life, like these amps, don't have the high end that they do when you model them, because the model is taking things up to like 10K, 16, like all the way into dog range. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like dog ear range, right?
Yep.
So the first thing I do is like eliminate the stuff that wouldn't be there on the amp, right? And this is a tip that I got from Rick Beato, who got it from somebody, I got it from somebody. You know, it's like, but I also control, this is something I kind of discovered for myself as I started shaping the low end in the cabinet block using the low cut and finding the frequency that I didn't like and using the low cut, rolling that back and forth. It kind of makes everything sound just like the amp more organically. You know what I mean? You start pulling the EQ knobs on the amp models themselves, I don't feel like that sounds as natural, you know.
Sure.
And maybe people that have had a bad experience with Fractal or Kemper or Helix, maybe that's what they're just like treating it. It's like they're not treating it like it's something within a range. Like in a modeler, it's the amp within a range that amp doesn't even live. There's low end in this range and there's high end in this range that amp in real life does not even get to.
Yeah, right.
So you have to eliminate that.
Are you throwing those EQ blocks in pre or post? Post. Yep. Okay. So it really gets rid of them.
So it goes like this. Let's build a simple signal chain right now in the Fractal block. It would go amp, right? Yep. And then it would go cabinet, and then it would go para, right? And the para is only grabbing everything after 5.5, okay, 6. Yeah. And it's just right. And it's doing one of these kind of things, not this. It's doing that. Yep. And then in the cabinet block itself, you have to go to cabinet, and then you have to go down to where it has proximity and all these variables. There's like 4 little knobs. You can just say low cut, take, and then what I'll do is I'll play the song while I'm building the tone that I'm going to track to or play live to or whatever, and then I'll take that song and I'll find the low end that fights whatever, and I'll just use my ears. I won't even like use numbers. It could look like 122. That's a random number, but that might be exactly where that low cut needs to come out. And I won't do it with the lows on the amp block. The amp block, most of the time my EQs on my amp block all look like this. Like they're never really too far from like stock,
Yep.
So that would be like my biggest pro tip for like modeler guys trying to get better tones. And it sounds so good in the in-ears when you do it that way too.
Cool. Hey, so speaking of in-ears, you use in-ears most of the time live?
Yeah. I use the JH Audios.
And
I love those. I love those Jerry's. They're good.
And what typically are you feeding yourself in that? Is that a mixture of the whole band? And do you add any ambience to your guitar sound that isn't being fed to front of house?
No, I give front of house what I hear. I like to hear the mix in my head that's kind of close to front of house if possible. Maybe a touch more me. I don't like myself loud to where I play soft. I like to dig in.
Yeah.
I would rather be too low and hit it hard than be too loud and be like, Yeah,
I totally get that. It's easy to spook yourself. That's why I asked about whether you add any more ambience, because if you are too loud, it's too direct. You're like, ooh, I've done that where I've apologized to the guys in the band going, man, sorry, I'm just playing like shit. And they go, sounds fine to us, man. Just having it too loud. So
being too loud in the in-ears is probably the number one, like when you're a rookie mistake and you're just starting out playing with in-ears, like being too loud in that's a very
total
common
vibe
thing.
killer. Yeah. So are you micing your cabs live? I mean, you got all those great heads there. Are you using something like the aux?
No, I mic them up. I mic them up.
Yep.
On my shows, the largest room I'll ever play at my current level in my career is 500-600. There's a theater here in town that I'll play, and we'll get about 500 people at it. And then when I'm on the road, those rooms be like small clubs, 300-person clubs or whatever. And then I'll use whatever I don't carry a front of house guy when I'm doing my solo stuff. I use whoever staff house engineer is. Usually they've got 57s. That's fine. Like a 57 sounds great, whatever. And then if I'm being super, super nerdy, and I have the luxury of working with, somebody awesome like Turbo or John Lozier or somebody like that, like Stewart. I mean, like there's some guys I've been very, very lucky to work with that are incredible. And I'm just like, hey man, what do you want from me? Like I'll let, it's like these guys get the big bucks to do the big boy gigs. It's okay if they're like, hey man, can you give me a little more sauce? Can you give me a little less delay? Can you give me like, I will trust that opinion all day, every day. It's not like the guy who's throwing a Miller Lite at you on the front row yelling Sweet Home Alabama, telling you your guitar has too much delay. Like I'm not going to trust that guy.
Yeah, sure. So in a live situation, when you don't have some of those big guns with you, do you have your particular way of miking your cab, like mic positions and things? Yeah. What works for you?
Yeah. It's a bit punishing, and you have to be very careful because you can't do it very long, is get your stage volume, put your face in front of it. Like that's really what you sound like. Like another common mistake of guys that guys that are playing clubs on the weekends and stuff, is they'll get their guitar where it sounds awesome, and they're like standing probably right here, and the cabinet's down there, and there it sounds up here, it sounds amazing, and then everybody on the front row is getting cut in half with a belt sander. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to get down there and get in that thing, but don't damage your hearing. You know what I mean? So it's always being very, very careful and not blowing yourself away. But you have to be aware of like what you are giving the microphone, and then from there, just a little off axis on a 57, sound like $1 million.
Yeah. So are you miking like right up on the the center, or?
Yeah, if it's a 57, I don't do this. I kind of give it one of these.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just a little something to get, if I can get just a little bit of roll off, natural ambient roll off, and not right on that dust cap. You know what I mean? That's, trying to, yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Andy, mate, it's been almost 2 hours, and I really thank you for the chat. You got anything coming up that you want to mention before we sign off?
Man, y'all better be watching out for me come November when they drop that Xbox Series X. I'm coming for you. If anybody wants it, man, I will be on Halo. I'll be playing Gears of War. I'll be playing all the Xbox big blockbuster jams. Hopefully by November they're letting us play live shows again. But without live shows, I'm just going to be doing, my video content, my album, working on album, and trying to make stuff at home. If those of you are interested, Andy Wood Music on YouTube. I got plenty of performance videos. I got plenty of woodshed videos. Those are a little more on the educational guitar hang kind of thing. And then patreon.com/Andy Wood Music is where you get the exclusive stuff. By that I mean kind of by request. Like if a patron wants some Eric Johnson style licks, I'll just throw some out there. If they want some chicken picking, I'll do that. So it's a little more personal, and I'm able to update that content, several times a week versus YouTube where I have to like really commit to one video a week or 2 videos a week,
Man, I said I was going to round it up, but you know what? A few questions just popped into my head. If you can still spare another 10 minutes.
Oh, I can do it.
You can do it. You're obviously right into the gaming thing. Do you sit around and noodle practice while you're doing that? I guess you can't because you get your hands on your controller.
No, it's actually the opposite. You can, because a lot of the games I play have loading times in between matches. Yeah, so during that, I always have a guitar within arm's reach. With that said, man, video game and movie scores and the music from those things are as influential to me as Steve Morse and the Dixie Dregs.
Is that right?
Like John Williams might as well stand next to Eddie Van Halen. Like that's like every album of mine for my instrumental nerd music, they all have a song that's inspired by a certain video game. Wow. On my first record, it was Emergence Day, and that was like a 7-string chug kind of thing in an odd meter, and that was inspired by Gears of War. There's a moment in that campaign. One of my biggest songs, I say biggest and being an instrumental guitar guy because I'm not big. It's like that's not what I mean. But like one of the songs I play at every show is a song called Reach, and it was inspired by the final moments of Halo Reach. And then on my newest record is a song called Beyond the Reef, and that's inspired by moments in Destiny 2. In all these video games, people don't realize the compositions, the music is amazing. Like a really great video game can't be done without great music. Same way with film. Like I really love some of the Hans Zimmer scores from like Gladiator. Like that's a great score, man. Another really great score. I mean, any John Williams score is amazing. I'm a huge Danny Elfman fan. There's even one of my Woodshed episodes is on Danny Elfman and like his music in Beetlejuice and The Simpsons and all that stuff. So I mean, we could have a whole nother hour just on that stuff.
Do you have a set practice routine that you go through as well to keep the chops up?
I don't even really practice. I just play. Like I try to listen to music. I try to surround myself. If I start feeling the edge go away, I try to Skype or Zoom with somebody that's inspirational to me. Like I just Skyped with one of the heads at University of North Texas, which is a famous jazz school. That's where like Keith Carlock went to school and Tim Miller went to school there. And one of their guys is Noel, and Noel is one of their guitar guys there. And I felt the edge kind of going away, and I was like, Noel, do you just want to? Can I pay you for a lesson? He's like, no, man, let's just get on and hang. And of course, I got in there, and he just modal harmony as steamroller of modal harmony over my face, and I needed it. And so that's the kind of thing that I do when I think of practicing in the traditional sense of sitting here and running John Petrucci licks for 3 hours like they're Hail Marys. That doesn't work for me. Like if I want to work on John Petrucci stuff, I try to listen to it and find things that I think make him sound like him, and then try to drill down on those things. Yeah, right. And most importantly, I'm also trying to drill down on things that make me sound like me. You know what I mean? Like, what is it that I can double down on that I sound like, you know?
And that's so important, isn't it? Sounding like yourself and being able to hear a few notes of a player and go, that's Jeff Beck.
Oh, that's that guy.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think those, like any compliment that I think any guitar player would want to hear, not great guitar player, just any guitar player would want to hear is like, oh man, I knew it was you by the first note.
Yeah.
Oh man, into that first measure, I knew that was you. I knew that solo was you. Like I think nothing warms my little black heart more than getting an email and being like, hey man, did you play on this guy's whatever? Did you do a guest solo on this thing? And oh, I knew it was you, you know, or like, you know, that's the stuff that you feel like you're doing the right thing and finding a way to be yourself and then form your own musical mission statement or whatever.
I think that goes for any instrument though, especially singing.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've never been a good singer, but I remember years ago taking a singing lesson with somebody and just saying, man, I just don't have a nice timbre to my voice. It's just, you know, the real nasally kind of thing going on there. And they pointed out to me, no, but listen to John Lennon. You know, he only has to sing a couple of notes and he doesn't have a nice tone about his voice, but you just know it's him straight away.
That's it. That's right.
Yeah. And, you know, drummers, Phil Rudd from AC/DC, nothing going on there chops wise, but man, he just lays it down. You go, that's Phil Rudd. You can just hear it a mile away.
I think that's really important. That's the number one thing in the Woodshed series that I've been doing is basically I'll just have some of my buddies call in, whether it be, you know, Mark Miller or whoever, right? Like they'll call in and we'll do a hang. And one of the things I want to talk to them is like, how do you sound like you, man? Like, what do you think? What have you done in your life to polish the stone that makes you Martin, that makes you Tom Quell, that makes you whoever? It's like, that's what I want to know about is how, because we're all walking up this big mountain of music. We're just at different points on it, right? And Tom's walking up on this side and I'm walking up on that side. You know, it's like I want to know how he got there. What are you doing over there? How'd you get your voice? You know what I mean? And that's always the most rewarding part of any conversation that I have with any musician is hearing their journey.
Yeah. Man, speaking of Tom Quayle, I was lucky enough to hang with him at Henning's 42 Gear Street last year and had this little impromptu guitar battle between him and Sammy Bowler, which was a lot of fun. But I got to sit beside Tom as he was warming up and just hearing his fingers doing that whole legato thing that he does, slapping against those stainless steel frets. Is like, listen to that. It's just, and he graciously gave me a go of his guitar, which was tuned all in fourths. Which is bizarre, but it kind of makes sense if you're a 3-note per string player because those patterns, that revolving pattern shifts and you don't have to accommodate for that B string. That's one way of looking at the fretboard. Is there a particular method that you use to view the fretboard? Because everyone is completely different. I've come to realize, you know, I'm caged or I'm 3-note per string. How do you view the fretboard?
God, I don't know.
Is it a combination of many things?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm trying to do is thinking about a line. Let me get a little bit of volume here. That's plenty right there, right? So, like, if I'm thinking about a line, I want to think about how I can make the line sing, you know? that right there is the simplest thing on the planet. But those intervals are. And it's like when I'm thinking like that cage kind of thing, it doesn't sing to me, you know. Another way that I would look at the fretboard would be more from a kind of is like the more of a chicken picking kind of thing. And at that point, I'm gluing triad boxes together in my mind. Like I'm seeing like something that may go down in a chicken picking format, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like those kind of isms, I'm just seeing 1 to flat 7, 1 to flat 7 across the whole fretboard. There's my 4 chord, right? So I'm thinking about like the Eric Johnson thing. I'm thinking more in groupings of like 5s.
Yeah.
Right. Or 4s. Those kind of things, right?
Yep.
And it shifts again if I'm going to think about like a fiddle tune kind of thing. And that's more like closer to the way Tom would finger some things, you know, with lines like, you know, something like that. So it's like it depends on like what I'm kind of going for. Again, it all like I guess maybe to answer your question, I'm a reactive player, I'm trying to let these drive and then react to the situation that's happening, that's giving me the input.
So when you're doing that descending chicken picking kind of thing, are you like, okay, I know my 5 different cage shapes. I'm in this one, and I've just gone from the D. Now I'm in the E area. Now I'm back down to the G. Are you connecting different patterns together, or have you more memorized the fretboard one string at a time?
Yeah, one string at a time is really great, right? But like visualizing where your intervallic jumps are, like. If I see G, I'm thinking about let's take a G dominant 7 kind of sound, right? Right? So let's take that kind of sound. I'm looking at now what's going to happen around my hand when I shift either going this way. So there's like 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3. Now I want to see maybe a hand shift where I scrunch my hand up, like I'm widening and opening my hand. It's not really caged, because a lot of times caged based playing, it's like play the thing here and then move to a different spot and play the thing here and then move to a different spot. It's like kind of like a guy wiping the windows, right?
Okay. Yep.
Like I'm trying to think about like my hand opening and closing and setting up a line. Like let's set up a very simple line that would be a very simple line would be like I'm not even thinking of a full line. I'm just thinking about here's 1, 3 or 1, 7, 5, and now I'm going to see flat 3, major third. You know.
Yep.
So now I'm seeing that I can move that way. And did you see how I'm squishing my fingers to set up what's going to be like? If I push them together, when I open them out again, I'm going to have more notes, and that's how I'm moving through these blocks, like that kind of thing.
Cool.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, I'm really seeing it. Really seeing it there.
And then when it goes into any kind of alterations, I can play whatever I want at that point. And everything seems to be kind of available where I want it to be.
Cool. Something else just popped up for me there. I noticed you're very much a thumb behind the neck player as you're playing those kinds of things. You know, some guys tend to...
Sometimes, but now it maybe like if I'm playing like if I've got that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, it's like what am I doing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
But if it's got to be like something, if I got to do a bunch of notes, then it's gonna be that kind of thing. You know.
And do you find that the height at what you play live. So for me, I've been doing there's been no gigs with the whole quarantine thing. So I've been doing a lot of playing sitting down. And one thing
So when you stand up, your guitar's up here?
Well, I went to do a show last weekend and I went to play some of the lines that that I'd been practicing sitting down. And then normally when I play guitar live, I have it pretty low and it just didn't work. So do you have your guitar up pretty high when you're playing live?
When I play live?
Yeah.
Not really.
No. And do you find there's any difference in the height?
Like I can't stand to play with it way up here. Like I can't gristle the bends. Like even when I'm sitting down, if I've got to get a big bend, if I got like I want the guitar to kind of go away from me a little bit. I want to kind of like get. But if I've got to go for something really like something very nerdy, I want to be able to get to that. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of crouched down. So when I play live, if I've got to go for something like that, I'll wedge the guitar kind of into my hip and assume that kind of thing.
Sure.
But I also just don't want to be the guy that's like playing with a guitar like way up over my head in some kind of like awkwardly not cool looking fashion. I know that's very shallow and I shouldn't worry about those things, but it's like you're never gonna look good. It's not gonna look cool when it's not gonna look cool when you get your picture taken. I think a great example of a guy that can really manhandle the balance of super technique level stuff and like where he holds it is a guy named Justin Derrico. Justin's a fabulous player, plays for Pink. He's got chops galore, and he wears his guitar kind of like a rocker. But when he goes to like light it up, he can get it into a position. I think that's a great balance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that thing you said about tilting it up, that's what I found. As I said, I've been practicing. We mentioned Tom Quayle, and when was at 42 Gear Street, he did a great video with my friend Vladimir on just his legato technique. And he was just saying about holding the hand like a limp spider, I think he said, a dead spider, and sort of getting it playing like this. And
as if I'm going to hand you something. That's the way I always tell people.
Yeah. So I've been practicing a lot of that, and just as I'm watching TV or whatever, just sort of getting the fingers and just making sure I'm feeling it on the fingertips and my fingers aren't falling over, and just sort of rolling through and just getting that sensation. And I started getting a lot more fluid, but then I went to play live, and like I said, man, it just... I wear my guitar quite low. Reason being, when I was playing in the Queen show, I raised it to the height that Brian May would have it, which was his bridge pretty much at hip height. But I've always played down here with my arm hanging down. And then I started getting this sore shoulder thing playing live. And I realized it was because I was holding my arm up, and I went back down to having it low, and I wasn't holding it like that. When you're doing cover band gigs and you're playing 3 or 4 1-hour sets, man, after a while, you're like, fuck, this just aches. And I realized that's why. It was because I was holding that up. So I went back down to low. But then trying to do these things that I've been practicing of trying to just get that nice flow just wasn't happening. And I thought, the angles are wrong. It's all down low. But you just nailed it on the head where you said, tilting it up this way. And I've noticed guys like Nuno Bettencourt, Eddie Van Halen, when they go for it, they'll just lean back, and then they can get that. They can still play down low, get that cool rhythm thing, and look cool. But then, hey, I need to get all fingers in that nice line, lean it back.
Yeah. Also, I don't like the way my hand feels to chicken pick with the guitar high. From purely technical standpoint, I don't like it to chicken pick when my hand is like getting very straight like that.
Yeah.
I like the chicken pick from more of this kind of sorry, microphone right there. Yeah, I like to have it a little lower for that kind of thing. Yeah. I obviously wouldn't chicken pick with that much overdrive either.
So you're using pick and fingers a lot when you're doing that kind of thing?
For the country thing, yeah.
Yeah. And when you sort of really let go with the shred, are you finding that you're using a hybrid picking technique?
Not really. A lot more alternate picking.
Man, can you go back a bit so we can see your hand there? Because I would really like to see that.
And then like for the chicken picking.
And now you got a microphone in the way, man.
Sorry.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's it. Perfect.
So yeah.
Wow. And there is a you did a thing with his name escapes me. Cracking the Code.
Troy Grady.
Troy Grady. Man, what a great series. That helped my picking out immensely, stumbling on that a few years ago and finding out about the different pick angles that people use and how to not get caught up in between. Was that something you were aware of before?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I wish I had a more long answer for that, but I don't. I've been working on, picking stuff since I was, a kid playing.
We've got the droids back again there.
Like that kind of thing. Oh, no.
Yeah. What a shame.
Sorry.
You don't know what fixed it last time?
Yeah, I do. Does that fix it?
It was still there as you said that then. Just rears its head. That's it. That's good.
It's Skype, man. Skype won't let me be on here longer than however long. No, just being on the picking hand thing, it's like more about like I've just thought about picking, trying to get things clean that are like difficult to alternate pick. Like that kind of thing sounds simple, but it's not. It's like this thing faster. Remember the Steve Morse?
Wow.
2 minute notes, whatever that is.
Yeah. So I mean, if I was to hear that line without seeing you playing it, I would think that you're finger picking that, but you're recreating that.
Yeah. Well, the same with these.
Wow, man, that's insane. And and is that something
Stupid human tricks for 1,000, Alex?
And is that something that's come from your mandolin background?
Probably, I would say so. Like playing a lot of fiddle tunes on guitar and mandolin,
Wow. So yeah, I can see there's not much hybrid picking going on, or none at all that I could see there of the other fingers coming in. So is that generally just when you get into the chicken picking sound that you?
Yeah, like learning some of those Brent Mason solos, with those kind of things. Yeah, that's like Brent's my guy. Like Brent's one of my favorite players. So it's like I learned a bunch of his stuff, over the years, and kind of mutating what he does with finger picks and like putting it into a flat pick and chicken picking thing.
Awesome.
Hybrid.
Did you ever get to play one of his signature Valley Arts guitars?
Huge neck, massive neck on
Really?
that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his guitar has a big old neck on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the tone of guitar comes from a neck. Wasn't until I started playing bigger, thicker necks that I noticed the resonance in them. Is that something that you've noticed?
I've got a red modern that's got a thinner neck on it, and it sounds like a freaking shotgun. It's like the most nuts modern I've got. It's like the super Strat looking thing.
Yep.
Man, I don't know. I think you can get a good piece of tree or a bad piece of tree in about any size.
Actually, man,
I think that's the thing we got to remember, so we got to remember these things aren't mechanical devices. They were once living organic beings, and you can cut up the same tree and build 4 guitars from it, and one will have the best piece of tree.
Yeah. Someone's asking,
I think that's why I wanted a guitar that didn't have crazy paint or anything, Like, hey man, you can kind of tell what this guy was in his former life.
It's funny. I totally, when you said that about that modern having a great sound, having a thin neck, I was just thinking about my stash there. And I got a 1990 Hamer, USA Hamer back there, that is just the thickest sounding guitar that I've got. And that's got a very thin neck, but
yeah,
just something about that piece of tree.
Yeah. It's the tree, man.
Yeah. That's got me thinking then, because I've got another Warmoth parts caster back there that feels great to play, but it just doesn't sound good. And I've got another spare body, almost identical. I'm hoping it's from a different piece of tree, and I should try that body instead and see if that makes a difference. It might be the missing piece. Okay, so Jimmy is asking whether you can play Eruption with chicken picking.
I've never thought about it. So I don't know. I'd have to work it out.
You have to sit down and work it out.
It would be really weird. I'd probably. Yeah. What'll be the next? So sorry. I'd have to work it all up.
Yeah.
I'm sure it could be done at some point in life, but
that could make for a viral video, man. There's an idea for
No,
it.
God, that seems like a bunch of time and effort into something I do not want to be known for.
Yeah, I posted
I think that is absolutely would be viral, and that's not. I just don't know if I'd want to be viral. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. And like you say, the time that you'd need to invest into it. I just posted a couple of weeks ago a cover of Joe Satriani's Always With Me, Always With You. I got the new Satriani pack from IK Multimedia and ran it through and went, whoa, that sounds just like the record, and played it. And everyone's like, well, it just sounds just like the record. But I've been playing that tune since I was 14 years old, and it's not like I sat down and went, okay, I'm going to learn that now. And so many requests of, can you do this Satriani song? Can you do that one? I'm like, no, that was a lifetime of me learning that tune. For me to sit down another 6 months and get something else down, no, I just don't have the time for that.
It's okay if people are like, hey man, we saw you on the Troy Grady thing and your picking's crazy. Like I'm very flattered and humbled to be known for that stuff. But I've put too much effort into not being a gimmick player that is like to do something like that and put hours in of something for a gimmick. It seems like a very low return on investment.
Yeah. There's one more question here. Stephen Douglas wants to know if you stay in touch with Dan Huff, and what's Dan up to?
I've never even met Dan.
Never met
Dan.
Okay.
I met him once in passing.
Okay, there you go. So that's a short and sharp answer to that one. Andy, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been great talking to you.
Oh man, it's been great. Thanks for having me, dude.
No problem, man. I try not to let these go too long. It's quite easy for it to get into the 3 hour zone. And you think, who's going to sit there watching these for that long? And we're pushing on 2.5 now. I will point out to folks that I do have these on podcast channels now. It was strictly a YouTube thing. So if the length of time is a bit long for you and you need to be able to just listen to it in the car or anything, it might be easier to find us on the podcasting channels. Alternatively, if you have found us on one of the podcasting sites and would rather see our faces, because look, face it, who'd not want to see me and Andy? Yeah. Jump on over to YouTube, give it a like, subscribe, all that kind of thing. But once again, thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to hit the button, and when I hit the button, this really cool logo comes up the end like this.